said.
You haven't been in. You've kind of stayed away from some of the construction works. You've been waiting for this moment to see it personally.
Yes, well, actually, just like when something was missing, because there is no church or no local church without a cathedral, which is the mother church of all the other churches in Paris. And also there's the historic significance of Notre-Dame, because with a lot of recollections, because of the novel by Victor Hugo, because of the Te Deum that was sung in August 44 when General de Gaulle walked down the Champs-Élysées and then walked into Notre-Dame. This meant victory.
And facing sniper fire, as he did.
Yes, well, so the fire was really a trauma.
Yeah.
Because it was something that seemed to be impossible, something that really left us just flabbergasted, voiceless, speechless, and helpless. And it is actually it's not so much a source of pride, but it is a very pleasant surprise to see that it was rebuilt so beautifully in such a short time. And it's going to be another cathedral. Because, see, I've seen pictures, I've not been inside, but I've seen pictures, and it is incredibly clear, luminous light, whereas in the old Notre-Dame, the darkness was actually one of the components of the mystery.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Now we're going to have light more than mystery.
And look at those arriving. These are live images from inside the cathedral as we speak. We've just seen the Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson talking to Michel Barnier. The ousted Prime Minister of France is taking place at an interesting time for French politics, the second time the fall of the French government, this time a vote of no confidence for this man. President Macron going to give a speech very soon in the eyes of the world watching him as we see the reopening. Let's also bring in, as we're watching these images, Bertrand Allemand, tour guide extraordinaire, co-founder too of the boutique guiding agency My Private Paris. Bertrand, clearly Notre-Dame has been central to your tours, the heart of the city. Tell us about how much of a draw it is to those coming to you.
Well, after the tear, the shock, the hope when we were told it would be 5 years, now it's time for joy and great expectation. I have to say that the first thing I want to do out of the studio is to run to it, try to sneak inside or wait till Monday. But definitely it's a huge parameter of why people want to go to Paris and will be even more so.
What did you do? I mean, this is a question I'm going to ask all of you tonight. This really was, the 15th of April, 2019. Where were you when moments? Just tell me about how you were affected by it on the day.
I was at the maternity. My firstborn was just born.
My gosh.
And some friends visited, said, "Oh, Notre Dame's burning," as it was a joke. I looked through the window and saw the smoke and ran to it and spent the next 3 hours watching it. So it was a very emotional day personally and of course for everybody.
Did you think personally we'd be here this quickly, within 5 years?
Certainly not. No, I have to say I was part of the doubtful and well, I'm glad I was proven wrong.
Great you're here as well with us, Bertrand. Also here, Ketevan Gorjestani, International Affairs editor. Very interesting. So we're watching these images, and you eagle-eyed more than the rest of us right now. Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris. We've just seen Jean-Noël Barrot, the, now ousted French foreign minister, with Michel Barnier. So we're kind of profile spotting right now. Tell us what you've been picking out, particularly when it comes to the French president, with soon to be the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, and also a meeting that's already happened with those two, plus Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine.
Yes, look, of course, the focus tonight is on Notre-Dame and the reopening. But as it happens, when you have so many heads of states gathered in one place, it automatically gives an opportunity to have a sort of mini summit on the sidelines. And this was something that Emmanuel Macron sort of really strategically created around this. He had initially announced that there would be a meeting, first a bilateral with Donald Trump, the U.S. president-elect, and then a meeting separately followed between Emmanuel Macron and Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. And at the last minute, Donald Trump was already inside the Élysée Palace. They had talked a little bit, and Vladimir Zelensky showed up, walked up the stairs, and joined them. And we have that picture, those images of Donald Trump, Emmanuel Macron, and Vladimir Zelensky standing, the three of them together, Élysée announcing a formal trilateral meeting between these three. It's pretty significant. I don't know if this is what Emmanuel Macron had planned all along, but it is very significant to see that image of the three of them together. Very significant, of course, for the Ukrainian president, who is hoping to keep that support from the Europeans, but also from the Americans. Also significant to see that Donald Trump agreed to that trilateral meeting, maybe a sign of things to come. We don't know what came out of this meeting just yet, but it is a very important diplomatic moment ahead of what will be a very cultural and historical moment.
So we're talking about the spectacle within the spectacle right now, and it is worth saying, Donald Trump making clear on his social media site, Truth Social, saying that he had to be here. He couldn't miss this. Let's just rewind back 5 years. This is Donald Trump speaking, then president, about what it meant to him personally, the burning of Notre-Dame.
The great treasures of the world, the greatest artists in the world. Probably, if you think about it, I would say, Jovita, it might be greater than almost any museum in the world, and it's burning very badly. It looks like it's burning to the ground. So that puts a damper on what we're about to say, to be honest, because that is beyond countries, that's beyond anything. That's a part of our growing up, it's a part of our culture, it's a part of our lives. That's a truly great cathedral. And I've been there and I've seen it, and there's no cathedral. I think I could say there's probably no cathedral in the world like it.
Okay, Donald Trump, just one of those invited tonight as world leaders start to gather. We're looking at images, in fact, of, well, it looked like the back of Donald Trump's head there. We'll find out in a moment. There's President Zelensky. So this is just after the trilateral, the coming out of that meeting from the Elysee. So this meeting just happening between President Macron, President Zelensky and President-elect Trump. And off they go. There's going to be a heck of a motorcade towards Notre-Dame. And who is about to see it? Well, Clovis Caselli, our correspondent outside Notre-Dame for us this evening. In the 4th arrondissement, a fairly drizzly night tonight, but what a night to be there. Tell us what's going on, Clovis. A huge gathering, I understand.
Indeed, what a night to expect. And I can tell you one strong image already. These thousands of people who have gathered along the banks of the Seine, despite the rain, despite the cold temperatures, they're all out with their umbrellas, just like us, and they are gathered to try to take a glimpse, try to see Notre-Dame, try to be part in some way to this historic day, this ceremony where Notre-Dame will reopen after a little over 5 years of hard work to renovate, to enable Notre-Dame to reopen, to fix its roof notably. Thousands here, up to 40,000 people allowed to join along the banks of the Seine to watch the ceremony on the giant screens currently on display. And I think that's very important also because it's not just about world leaders, it's not just about rich donors and benefactors, it's also about the people here in France and from around the world, because Notre-Dame, this reopening, is not just of interest to the French people. The world is watching, and early in the afternoon we got to meet with some tourists and French people who are here and who are trying to get as close as possible to Notre-Dame for this very special moment. Take a listen.
We heard a lot about it. We also had a close one who died the same day as the fire, so this date is engraved in our memory, the 15th of April, 2019. It's important for us as well. We just saw the facade, but we'd like to visit it. I heard that it opens tomorrow to the public, if I'm not mistaken. It will be impossible. Our flight is tomorrow morning, so we'll have to come back.
Well, listen, I think it's a good thing. It's part of our history, it's part of our heritage. Voilà. It's a promise that was kept. I think people will be there, and that's a positive thing.
Yes, you are the perfect man for the job tonight, suitably named after the Frankish king back in the late 5th century, founded not just Paris, but almost where you are, the island of the city. Tell us another thing, because you talked to a number of people there. There's a huge setup, isn't there, for thousands of people. Tell us about the security and how that sits together.
Of course, it's an important point, security. France in a high level of terror alert, as always in these kinds of situations, notably for the opening ceremony of the Olympics. So a lot of police presence, 6,000 police forces. Add to that many soldiers, drones patrolling in the air, and all of this, of course, because you have heads of state, over 40 heads of state, Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine, several heads of state from Africa, and US President-elect Donald Trump, who was a few minutes ago at the Elysee Palace meeting with President Emmanuel Macron. Let me tell you a bit about what we're going to expect in the next few minutes. In about 15 minutes, President Macron should arrive here at Notre-Dame, just outside on the Parvis, on the square, if you will, where he will greet the heads of state arriving. We are told that Donald Trump will arrive last, and he will be sitting next to Emmanuel Macron during the ceremony. It's important also, it's a strong symbol for both men, and Emmanuel Macron wanted Donald Trump to come, and for Donald Trump also, it's an important move. It's the first trip abroad since he won the US elections. And I can tell you also that many of the guests, there'll be about 2,000 guests in total, are already in the cathedral, notably big donors such as Bernard Arnault from LVMH and his sons, but also the Pinault family, Xavier Niel, and several other members of government, and of course foreign guests. Among the heads of state and important guests, of course, Prince William from the UK representing the government there, and also several other people like the President of Germany, Steinmeier. But this is not just about heads of state. It's not just about world leaders. It's about the people getting to finally be allowed to see Notre-Dame, and possibly, if they're lucky enough, go into Notre-Dame now it's reopened, even though you can book your tickets online for the next few weeks, but it's fully booked, so you have to wait a little bit, be patient. But the Notre-Dame is expecting 15 million people to visit it within the next year, and it could be you.
Clovis, great to talk to you. So we're just watching these live images. Edi Rama, the Albanian Prime Minister, meeting a moment ago with Michel Barnier, and the guests waiting for the moment. There's going to be several significant moments tonight. We have the secular ceremony. We have tributes to all of the hundreds of firefighters, the first responders on that night, the 15th of April 2019. We have a speech of tribute from Emmanuel Macron. What an interesting time for him, given what we said, this fall of the government, yet the eyes of the world upon him. And this is, make no doubt about it, a legacy moment for him. And we also have a religious service coming up where we'll see the reawakening, too, of the organ tonight. A fascinating story in itself, including the organist, Olivier Latry, who's been doing the job, part of the music for the cathedral since he was 23. He's now in his early 60s. So many stories tonight. I want to go briefly to York. I want to bring in John David, the master mason at York Minster, because York Minster suffered a similar fate. It was involved in a rebuild 40 years ago, a huge, devastating fire back in 1984. Great to have you on the programme, John. And I think, I'm right in saying you were actually literally pulling furniture. You were pulling whatever you could grab from the building that day.
Yes, good evening. Yes, it was in the middle of the night. A number of residents and clergymen who live around the Minster were there and taking whatever valuables out of the Minster. We didn't know what the extent of the fire was going to be, but the firefighters were concerned that the fire might spread to other roofs. So we were trying to get anything out of the Minster, thinking about the worst scenario, really.
The other point, John, I believe I'm right in saying that you were personally invited on a private tour to Notre-Dame to see the state of the cathedral, to look at it after the fire. Tell us about what you saw.
Yes, it was an unofficial visit, contact with the architects involved, and it was just devastating. What was really memorable was the smell. The smell I'd smelt 30 years before in York, the same morning, that sort of damp, charred wood smell. And a sort of metallic smell, because there was a lot of that wrecked scaffold on the roof. It was really astonishing, devastating, and I think far more extensive than at York. But at least Notre Dame had a stone vault, which was severely damaged, but that saved the rest of the cathedral, I think, really.
Sam, great to have you on the programme and be part of this together as we go through this evening, because we're expecting this to be probably a couple of hours, the whole ceremony in itself, and we're going to bounce back and forth, explain exactly what's going on. We have the bird's eye view here as we're watching the guests continuing to arrive. Just seen Prince Henri, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, a moment ago. I want to bring back in Jean Duchesne. You were listening to John David in York. Tell me what you were thinking.
Well, actually, there's been a big problem. There have been some controversies between the Élysée Palace and the Archdiocese of Paris.
Quelle surprise.
No, well, there was not really a quarrel, but just a disagreement. Okay. And I've pointed that President Macron would have loved to speak inside the cathedral. And the clergy strongly objected to this in the name of the separation of church and state.
Really?
Yes, it was. See, everything was upside down. It was the church pleading for the separation. The idea was that to prevent Mr. Macron from acting as if he were a clergy member,
like he was the Archbishop,
some kind of a high priest.
Yes,
you know? Because this means that going against the sacralization of the secular power. And so it was agreed in the first stage that Mr. Macron would speak outside. Now, however, it seems that if not heavens, at least the climate was Mr. Macron's ally.
Yes.
So that because the wind and because of the rain, you see our correspondent with an umbrella. Well, it was impossible to hold the ceremony outside. So eventually, Mr. Macron will speak inside the cathedral this evening. However, they have arranged a special podium for it, which will not be used otherwise, because so that to make it sure, make it plain that he will not act as a cleric.
That is fascinating. So this is effectively the church kind of winning out at first, but there's a compromise of sorts found.
No, the church was betrayed by heaven or by the
Mon Dieu. Great. Fascinating. Andrew Yarrow, what a great point to bring Andrew Yarrow in, a author, historian, former journalist at the New York Times as well, and a speechwriter for the Clinton administration, joins us as well on the programme. Andrew, just tell us what you're making of what we're watching diplomatically this evening and those significant world leaders who are here.
Well, thank you, Gavin. I mean, first off, this is such a wonderful occasion for France and for the world. I think the political has to take second stage to the fact that this is reopening one of the great monuments of the world, reopening within 5 years. But certainly the political is there. A very tumultuous time in French politics, a tumultuous time in American politics. The fact that President-elect Trump is there on his first foreign trip. Donald Trump was president when Notre-Dame caught fire 5 years ago. The fact that Emmanuel Macron has invited him to France, to Notre-Dame's reopening, that he will be seated beside Macron. They've had an up and down relationship. It is very interesting. We don't know what happened with the meeting with Vladimir Zelensky and the two President Macron and President-elect Trump. We certainly hope that there can be some resolution, a just resolution to the war in Ukraine. But the fact that Donald Trump is there tonight, certainly sending a symbol back to America. And I think it's very sad, too, that Joe Biden, who's still president of the United States for another 6 weeks, the second Catholic president of the United States, is not in France. I'm glad that Jill Biden is there, but it feels like the torch has already been passed to Donald Trump. The fact that he is there in Paris and Joe Biden is not.
Watching Karl Nehammer, the Chancellor of Austria, who's been speaking with John Kerry, I think you may be aware of and worked with in your time there. So we're seeing this array of people. Just going to go to Ketevan, Gurjistani a moment, because just to pick up on that point from Andrew, no President Biden.
No President Biden. He was obviously invited by Emmanuel Macron. The White House stating some scheduling conflict to explain why Joe Biden is not in Paris and why it is only Jill Biden representing the official Biden administration. And that is very surprising. And the guest mentioned it. He is a Catholic. He has made a lot of show of his faith. He talks about it very often. He goes to church very often. People like me who have covered the White House and Joe Biden know that every chance he gets, he goes. And so you would have expected that the reopening of such a cathedral would be something that he would want to witness and to be part of. It didn't happen. We might at some point understand exactly why, because scheduling conflicts can mean a lot of things. Jill Biden will be there, and Clovis touched upon the seating arrangement, which itself is very indicative and very significant. It will be Emmanuel Macron, Donald Trump, the U.S. president-elect, sitting next to the French president. Then there will be Brigitte Macron, the wife of the French president. And then there will be the current First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden. So it's going to be a first row that is going to be very interesting. And then all of the other dignitaries and heads of state and government. And I think that for Emmanuel Macron, the presence of Donald Trump was important too, given that the current U.S. president was not going to be there. I think it was important because of the role that Donald Trump played, because he was president at the time of that fire, and also the diplomatic importance of bringing him. And I think also that Emmanuel Macron knows and understands the personality of Donald Trump and how much Donald Trump enjoys and likes the pomp and circumstance that countries like France can display in these type of events. And he is likely going to enjoy the spotlight, going to enjoy being sat in the most important place, if you will, because he's sitting next to the French president during the ceremony. And of course, the pomp and circumstance of being received at the Élysée Palace before that. So all of this is a sort of mix of cultural, historical, diplomatic, all of that is woven in together. And we see, as we see some of the guests that are there, that you have members of the French political spectrum, if you will, foreign dignitaries, and also different types of guests and artistic guests, things like that. So really a combination of everything coming here together to witness this reopening.
We have a big moment coming up as well. So what you're seeing at the moment, these beautiful image of nighttime of Paris and inside as well. We're now seeing the kind of shepherding of the heads of state, the heads of government as well. John Kerry there again. And what we're going to see is they'll slowly be guided towards well, we're going to see the images very soon of a big moment, probably one of the iconic moments of tonight. At 7 o'clock pile, exactly here in Paris, we want to see the opening of the doors to the cathedral, a very specific moment. Jean Duchesne, talk us through what we're going to see when that happens with the Archbishop Laurent Ulrich.
Also, there's a special ritual. It means that the Archbishop is going to knock at the cathedral's door, the cathedral main door, with his crozier. And he's going to knock 3 times. It's not going to open at once. It's going to have to knock 3 times. And each time he knocks, there's be the answer of a psalm. And then the 3rd time, the doors will open. And then the clergy will walk, and the other guests will walk into the cathedral and take their seats. And then, of course, there's going to be another very important moment, which is the reawakening of the organ. And this time, the Archbishop will have to call the organ 8 times, no fewer than 8 times, then before with music and psalms, until it begins and gives out and lets out its full strength. It is certainly a beautiful moment. And there's going to be other very important moments. So this is just for the reopening. But then there will be other very important events tomorrow at Mass, and at the Sunday Mass, which is the new altar. Because there's a new altar, will be consecrated, which is fairly uncommon, exceptional business with special anointments, prayers, and also the insertion of relics into the stone of or it's bronze in this case, of the altar. It is a very exceptional, unusual, and moving ceremony.
I want to talk.
The altar is just the center of the church, but in a way, the altar is an image or a symbol, a representation of Christ himself, which is why it is so important. It is really the heart of the cathedral.
I want to know more about that in a moment. I just want to just catch you up with these images we're seeing live of President Macron and the First Lady, Brigitte, making their way to the ceremony now after, as we just heard from Clovis, that's trilateral meeting with President-elect Trump, also with President Zelensky. So we're going to watch these images as they make their way towards this moment in the next half an hour. We'll see the opening of the doors. Bertrand, just to pick up on what we were hearing from Jean, talk about the organ. There's two fascinating things, actually. First of all, he talks about the crozier, which is the adapted staff of the Archbishop, which is actually constructed, I think I'm right in saying, from some of the undamaged beams of the wood. Is that right,
It was sculpted by Sylvain Dubuisson, a renowned sculptor and artist. He sculpted a new crozier from a half-burnt
So this is symbolising
beam of the old cathedral.
So this symbolises that the shepherd's staff, that he's leading the flock,
Yes.
those in front of us.
Yes.
This is incredible.
This is supposed to be the shepherd's staff, you know.
He talked about the organ as well, Jean Bertrand. When we were listening to that, this is quite a remarkable story. It survived. It goes back to, I think, 19th century and even before. And it was completely contaminated in lead, so it had to be cleaned, reassembled and brought back. And there are so many stories like that you must have looked at and be astounded by, that they've managed to get the church clean. And even things like the gargoyles and the chimeras, not using water because it would damage the stone, but using a kind of latex as a glove to pull off all of the dust. And we're seeing a very different cathedral as a result.
Certainly, yeah. We were first so shocked by the amount of flames and the colors, the volume, etc., the image of the spire falling. But the next day, if you remember, the first image we got was when they opened the door and we would see the golden cross that was still shining, untouched, unburned. And eventually we realized there was a lot of items inside the cathedral that weren't touched at all. They were spoiled by the dust, by the soot, but they were ready to be open for the cathedral again.
I'm going to go back to Clovis Caselli outside Notre-Dame as he watches on with President Macron and his, former Prime Minister, the shortest Prime Minister in terms of time span in living memory, 3 months. Also, history books, Salma Hayek we're noticing as well in the crowd. They're celebrities too. Clovis, this is a very interesting legacy moment, isn't it, for Emmanuel Macron, who's made this his personal mission to see this odyssey through.
And remember, 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, in April 2019, when the fires were ravaging Notre-Dame, Emmanuel Macron said, we can do it, we can fix it, we can restore it within 5 years. That was the aim, to finish it by 2024, and that's exactly what happened. Let me just tell you about who I met earlier this afternoon. I was talking to a cafe owner just opposite Notre-Dame on the Ile Saint-Louis, just on the other side of the Seine. And he was telling me 5 years ago, when the fire was burning, when we saw Notre-Dame and the firefighters battling the flames, we could not believe our eyes. We could not believe what we were seeing. And then when we heard that within 5 years, and that was the target, it would be restored, we didn't believe it either, but the time has come. We're so happy. All the people who live on the Ile Saint-Louis are very fond, of course, of Notre-Dame. It's not only them, of course, all the Parisians, the French people, Catholics around the world, and many more. And that's why it's such an important moment for France. the French President Emmanuel Macron also saying a few days ago, France is thanking deeply, expresses gratitude towards the workmen and the women who worked towards restoring this iconic cathedral. All of those who worked tirelessly to try to fix it. And of course, the firemen who were battling the flames, who some of them risked their lives and had to show spontaneity, had to show the skills to manage to put an end to the fire here. Well, there will be a film shown tonight to pay tribute to their work, those who risked their lives doing so. And that will also be an important moment, especially during the Republican ceremony, as the Élysée is calling it, with the 15-minute long speech of Emmanuel Macron. There will be that speech. There will be that film shown. And during the speech of Emmanuel Macron, we're told he will talk about l'art d'être français, the art of being French. And he will explain what he means by that. And that is that every French person is part of a tradition, a transmission, and Notre-Dame part of this common history that binds all the French people together. And that's also why it's such a significant moment for the country.
Clovis, thank you. We're watching these live images. President Macron meeting with former President François Hollande, currently a Socialist MP. And Clovis was just talking and referring to some really beautiful, inspiring moments in the past few years to get to this stage. President Macron making it a personal task. Here we see Nicolas Sarkozy, another former president, and Carla Bruni with him making their way in. And how President Macron, his 8th visit, just a week ago, gathered all of the 2,000 workers, craftsmen, craftswomen, mainly 250 or so firms, family-run firms as well, the best of French artisanship, with international help as well from all around the world, that dates back, they call them the companions of duty, that dates back to medieval times, passing tools and skills on from that. Bertrand, just a quick word from you about that, just looking at the artistry to get it back and the honouring the old traditions.
Yeah, you mentioned the companion and the companionship is something that started with the building of the cathedral, as the masons were starting to get organized, share their secrets, some say, or knowledge, others would say, and creating these guilds, and with the masters, the companion, the apprentice. And it's really astonishing to see that this has not disappeared. It never disappeared. So it's not like it was brought back to life. It's just the light was put back on it. And what I think is very moving is many companies and men who worked on rebuilding Notre Dame are competitors in the real world, I would say. They are battling to win a contract for restoring this church or that chapel, etc. Well, here, to be done in 5 years, this restoration work had to be done by all of them at the same time and not against one another.
And also just worth saying that he brought in a 5-star General Jean-Marie Georgelin, who had his own office in the presidency. So he had that quick line to get things done. Sadly died 2 years ago, to which President Macron etched his name within the wood of the spire to keep his memory for years to come. I want to talk about the politics going on. I think we've just seen a moment ago Félix Tshisekedi, the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So let's look at on a wider perspective here. I'm going to start with Seema Gupta, our correspondent in Rome. This is a huge moment, Seema, tonight in the Catholic calendar, and yet the Pope isn't there, declining an invitation. Tell us about the dynamic there, Seema.
Yes, I mean, there have been some reports that some French bishops perhaps annoyed that he's not there in Paris this evening, that the French establishment not happy that he declined this invitation to come. Could it be perhaps that he was angered by French policies with regards to immigration, the plight of migrants being something very close to the heart of the pontiff, or perhaps not happy with the decision to make the right to abortion part of the French constitution? But perhaps it could simply be because of a scheduling conflict. I mean, today, here in Rome, this afternoon, Pope Francis presided over a consistory to put in place 21 new cardinals. So this was a busy part of the year for the Pope in the lead up to Christmas and the lead up to the Jubilee Catholic year in 2025. And on Sunday, he will also be having the annual commemoration of a feast day to the Virgin Mary, something that happens every year on the 8th of December. That is an important ceremony here in Rome for Pope Francis. So he simply couldn't make it for this weekend. Also, perhaps the Pope really likes to stress more on the communities, Catholic communities in the peripheries, and not so much something happening maybe perhaps in a major European capital, because it's interesting to note, while he's not there in Paris this weekend, he will next weekend be making a trip to the French Mediterranean island of Corsica to attend a Catholic conference, and President Macron is scheduled to meet him there. So perhaps once again, his stress on Catholic communities in the peripheries rather than perhaps a grand cathedral opening in Paris.
Thank you so much for watching live images. Here's King Philip of Belgium just arriving with the Queen as well. Emmanuel Macron welcoming more guests. Just a word, John, on that, on the Pope not being here. It is an interesting moment. So there's some reports in the French press that some French bishops were annoyed by the Pope's decision to stay away. One bishop spoke to France 24 on the condition of anonymity, and yet the head of the Bishops' Conference of France said this. This is Archbishop Éric de Moulin-Beaufort, telling reporters, the star of Notre-Dame reopening is Notre-Dame herself.
Yes. Well, actually, the Pope, I mean, this is not a surprise. So we all know that the Pope prefers, rather than the center or the top, he prefers the peripheries, the outside world. He prefers reaching out to people who are not at the heart of the church, to bring them to sending the message that they are, even though they are far away, they are outside, they are outcasts, they are scorned, well, they are in the heart of the church. Now, there are other considerations also to be taken into account. And it is the fact that, first of all, there was a coincidence with a very important Christian festival, which was to have been celebrated tomorrow, Sunday, because the 8th of December is the festival, the celebration of the Immaculate Conception. So there was already some kind of a jam. And then there is another jam, that's that the Pope is creating 21 new cardinals tomorrow. And it is quite remarkable that there is no French cardinal among the 21 new cardinals. So if we really want to say that our pride is being somewhat ill-treated, well, here is another argument. Well, it is clear that the Pope does not think he would have been in his place among all those world leaders. The Pope does not want to be a world leader, and he thinks that he's got more weight if he speaks from outside of that inner circle.
So we're just watching these images. It wouldn't be fascinating to just pick up the microphone here and be a fly on the wall, these conversations. This is Andrzej Duda, the president of Poland, just arriving. Here's Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, coming straight from the car. And she has had an interesting relationship with Emmanuel Macron. Ups and downs, I think, would be an understatement. We've also seen, just a moment ago, King Philippe and Queen Mathilde of Belgium arriving. So it's a who's who at the moment as they gather to get to this moment of the opening of the doors. Jean Duchesne was just telling us a moment ago. We're also seeing more royalty arriving. Henri, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. Let's go to Fraser Jackson, our correspondent in Washington. Many questions, Fraser, this evening. This spectacle within the spectacle as the guests continue to arrive. Kedevan mentioned a moment ago about the seating arrangements having Emmanuel Macron next to President-elect Trump, next to Brigitte Macron, and then next to the floaters, Jill Biden. Tell us about President Biden not being here and the floatist being here instead, and whether that's making any kind of noise in the States.
Well, of course, it raised a few eyebrows as to why President Biden wasn't there, but President-elect Trump was there. Well, the White House gave us an explanation just a day or so ago when Karine Jean-Pierre said that it was due to a scheduling conflict. Now, indeed, it must be said that Joe Biden does have the Kennedy Center honors happening on Sunday evening. But it should also be noted that Jill Biden will also be there at the Kennedy Center honors, and Joe Biden currently has nothing on his schedule for Saturday. So there have been questions as to whether Joe Biden could have gone and made it back in time as well. So there has been a couple of eyebrows raised there, but of course the main question really and the main focus has been on the fact that Donald Trump will be there sitting next to Emmanuel Macron during this ceremony. It's his first trip abroad as president-elect, but of course he's been meeting with numerous world leaders in his time in this transition period, including Justin Trudeau. He's had many different phone calls with world leaders as well. And I'm told by a source as well that he's also been meeting privately with Prince William of the United Kingdom as well whilst at this celebration. So he is using this almost as some kind of summit, as it were, and meeting with various world leaders on the sidelines of it. And of course, we just saw a few moments ago, we saw that meeting between Zelensky, Macron and Trump as well, the trilateral summit basically inside of the Elysee Palace as well. So it is a big event for Donald Trump, his first as president-elect, his first international trip as president-elect, but also for the French, it's a moment to reset these relations, which soured somewhat over the course of that tenure in Donald Trump's first administration.
Fraser, thank you. Great to talk to you. So we are watching Alexander Stubb now, the president of Finland, with Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte. An all smiles moment, all smiles just before we saw, as Fraser was talking, with Giorgia Meloni. Oh, Kitavan to be a fly on the wall.
Yes, I mean, these events are always something where these heads of states just get an opportunity to speak in a way that they don't usually, because there is a lot of chit-chat, obviously, but there is also a lot of waiting and a lot of sideline sort of important conversations that are happening obviously not when they're shaking hands, but later on as they wait inside the cathedral. I think that's where those important conversations are taking place sometimes. And you see there that Emmanuel Macron is taking the time to sort of greet all of these heads of state, stand there for an official picture with the presidential couple and those guests that are arriving. We're expecting Donald Trump to be the last one to arrive, again a sign, if you will, of deference by Emmanuel Macron to Donald Trump, because if you think just simply with protocol, because he's president-elect, he wouldn't necessarily come ahead of some of these other heads of state, but that's how they've planned it. Also because the Americans have heavy security around their elected leaders, and so they usually don't like having their principal waiting around in a place, and they like him to be last.
Just take a look at these images for a moment. This is Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the president of Germany, alongside President Macron. Very interesting dynamics going on as well. We're seeing a number of leaders who we had confirmations fairly late, not for the German president, but certainly the likes of Giorgia Meloni we didn't hear from. We've got Prince William we should see in a moment as well arriving. Bertrand, let me talk to you about one of the factors that's brought so many people here. Outside of the importance to Catholics, is watching Prince Albert II of Monaco there, shaking hands and giving Brigitte Macron an embrace. It's the fact that go through a kind of potted history here, because we've seen the thread of fabric of French life within Notre-Dame, haven't we? We've seen the beatification of Joan of Arc. We've seen the self-crowning and coronation of Napoleon in front of a furious pope. We've, go through the years, as Jean mentioned it a moment ago, we've seen, Charles de Gaulle on the liberation of Paris, facing snipers going into the cathedral. Talk to me about what you tell those coming on your tours of the importance of this jewel of France.
Well, we usually try to tell them that even before Notre Dame was built, that very location was the center of Paris, a temple that pre-existed even the Catholic institution there was found.
So this was a Roman temple to
yes,
Jupiter?
Exactly. And a pillar from it is now at the Carnavalet Museum in Paris. So it's those very stone, this very piece of land is the beating heart of Paris since even before it was called Paris. Maybe you talked about the self-coronation of Napoleon in front of a quite rather angry Pope. Maybe that's another reason why Pope Francis didn't want to come here to what seems to be a very almost a self-coronation from Macron saying, I will make it happen in 5 years. That's what happened. And it feels a bit like a coronation today.
The Pope is having his revenge of Napoleon by enjoying a triumph in Corsica.
Yes, it's actually worth pointing out that the Pope...
We can connect this all.
He can't come to Notre-Dame, but he will be in Corsica next week.
Yes.
And Corsica is what, something like 85%, maybe even 90% Catholic amongst the 350,000 people.
Yes, it's a very interesting case of what we call religious populism.
He has dominion.
Yes.
One piece also of history, we could say world history, is that it's not only for the French that Notre Dame is important. In 1431, an English king was crowned. Henry VI of England was crowned King of France in England in Notre-Dame Cathedral. And so it's connected to more than just our history.
It reminds us clearly, you know, when we step back in time to remember that this was a cathedral that was allowed to go to rack and ruin after the revolution. And it was a certain Victor Hugo. There was kind of a plea for its rebuild, almost some might say propaganda within his word, Notre-Dame de Paris, Notre-Dame, well, as we know it in English, the Hunchback of Notre-Dame, and how that saw the rebuild.
Yeah, it certainly was a wind of passion that came toward Notre-Dame and the French heritage more in general. It's interesting how it's always the same story. It needs to be on the edge of collapsing to get interest, I would say political and financial support, because we can all, pray around and hope Notre Dame will be restored, etc. But you need some kind of power to steam the engine and get this started.
How many people who come on your tours when you see Notre Dame bring up Victor Hugo?
I would say all of them.
Yes.
All of them. It's definitely through the Hunchback, and whether it's the Disney version, the musical, or that people hear about Notre Dame. Not everybody who visits Notre Dame is a Catholic or a Christian, and they still have this will to see it because it goes beyond just Christianity.
It's just interesting. As we were talking, we were seeing these just very interesting moments of the people who are meeting with and greeting with President Macron. We just saw Gianni Infantino, a not universally popular figure, formerly of FIFA, now with the International Olympic Committee. We're seeing some... Tell me.
Can I add something on the history of Notre Dame? See, Notre Dame became a national monument actually in the 19th century only. And actually, if it was saved, because they were considering tearing it down or turning it into some kind of a huge storehouse, it was because it would have been too costly to pull it down. You mustn't forget that during the French Revolution, Robespierre, the most radical leader, initiated a cult of the goddess Reason in the cathedral. And then if Victor Hugo wrote his book, The Hunchback of Notre-Dame, it was because of the cathedral was falling down, literally.
And they had decapitated a number of statues, a great number of statues, thinking they were previous French royalty, and they were wrong.
Well, actually, no, they were just the kings of the Old Testament.
Yes.
They were the king of Judah and Israel, but they looked like kings. And actually, what was beheaded was not kings, but the royalty.
I'm guessing, given the images we're seeing, what appears to be, well, it's a Peugeot, but the black I saw gave me a sense of a motorcade of maybe seeing the beast shortly. We are, 10 minutes away from the opening. As Katavan, you mentioned a moment ago, we will soon see President Trump. Are we going to elect Trump, I should say? Are we starting to see his motorcade?
Cars that are too small to be for Donald Trump for now. For now.
No, these are French cars. I suppose
Exactly.
they have to be.
So this is
for Lincolns or
yet,
something like that.
Yes, that's what we're waiting for, isn't it? Okay.
These are French cars, you see, obviously.
Can I talk about...
Some Zelensky.
Oh, it's President Zelensky. Okay, we're seeing President Zelensky arriving after his meeting. This is somebody who's had a huge amount of travel to try to continue this message as we go into the third winter of the Ukrainian war. And at a time where it's very difficult for European leaders, very difficult for world leaders, this conversation about what will happen when Donald Trump comes into power, I think to touch upon the importance of this, not just for Notre-Dame, for President Zelensky, I mentioned the spectacle within, to have that conversation, that time with both Emmanuel Macron tonight and President-elect Trump, could be priceless.
Absolutely. And I think you will see later how much of a change it's going to have. But already looking at the reaction of Ukrainians on social media, they're seeing this as a huge victory for them and thanking Emmanuel Macron. So I think that if there was a big success when it comes to the diplomatic aspect, this might be it. The fact that Emmanuel Macron managed to get Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky in the same room discussing the situation in Ukraine. We don't know what the tone of this conversation was, but the fact that the U.S. president-elect agreed to have that meeting, this trilateral meeting with Zelensky, is very important. The image, that picture of the three of them standing side by side was also used by Ukrainians on social media to say, hey, Vladimir Putin, look what is happening in Paris. And so a lot of people are seeing this as possibly a sort of a huge diplomatic step for Volodymyr Zelensky. Of course, we all know that Donald Trump is unpredictable. This could be the first step in a good sort of trajectory for Volodymyr Zelensky, but it could also just be a picture and a photo op, and there could be a sort of shift for Donald Trump. But I think that for the Ukrainians right now, being seen seeing their president with the U.S. president-elect and Emmanuel Macron, that is seen as one of the leaders of support for Ukraine within the European Union, is very significant. And we're seeing right now Prince William arriving there representing the UK. He is actually going to be meeting, or maybe has met already, I don't know exactly, but they have announced that he would be meeting with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, as well as with Jill Biden during this trip.
Very interesting, because he was also, worth saying, Donald Trump, a big fan of his Prince William's grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, if you remember, not too far back when he was president, that misstep against royal protocol, stepping in front of the Queen, meeting the royal guards at the time, but maybe people would say that was typically Trump. I want to go back to John David. I'm going to come to you in just a moment, John, but I want to hear from John David in York, because talk to me about the links between York Minster and the cathedral as we start to get towards the opening of the doors, and actually the inspiration as well of a certain master builder, if you will, that many still look towards. We're talking about Eugène Viollet de la Duc, who rebuilt, essentially restructured Notre-Dame back in the 1800s. His importance. John David.
Well, it was a wonderful reawakening of the importance of these cathedrals. As somebody mentioned earlier, it sometimes takes a sort of slight disaster to actually do this, but they are there. They're for the people. They're for the religious base, but they are a symbol of the people, the country. They survived so long, and we should keep them going. And the craft is there, as long as the willingness to get the job done.
Yeah. John David, just watching images, President Zelensky meeting an ally, President Andrzej Duda of Poland. We're watching as well the President of Georgia, said to be outgoing in the next week and a half, Salome Zurabishvili. I spoke to last week, who told me that given the instability, the political crisis, the chaos, the non-stop nightly protests in Georgia, her words, it wasn't a free or fair election, she said, pointing to EU observers as well, that she will not be standing down until that result is looked at again. So, amidst the politics, it tells you of the importance of the occasion to be here. John.
Yes, I just wanted to come back to the geostrategic. There's another person who might have been here in better times, and that's Mr. Putin. We should not forget that, when Mr. Putin came to France, he insisted on visiting Notre-Dame. And even before him, while Mr. Medvedev was standing in for him as president because he couldn't run he couldn't serve more than 2 consecutive terms, Mr. Medvedev insisted on venerating the crown of spines. So the cathedral holds something that is clearly dear to Russians themselves. So we can say that the Pope is not the only noteworthy absence here, and that, perhaps this may give us hope for something else, and we can think of other absent celebrities.
You're watching a very special moment here on France 24 this evening as we see, in just a few minutes, the opening of the doors of Notre-Dame as, the first time in 5 years, the entrance we will see, at very particular process that Jean was talking about a moment ago, and we're still seeing the entrance, actually, arrival, so it may be slightly late because we are still waiting for Donald Trump, Ketevan.
And that possibly, I'm not sure, but that possibly could be him, that last car. We're going to see, usually if...
it's a Chevy.
It seems so.
It's... Waiting. There you go.
Okay.
So the U.S. President-elect now, Donald Trump, arriving. What we expect, or that's what we had been told, was that he was likely going to be the last one. So we'll see if that actually turns out to be true. Arriving there, where he'll be greeted, of course, by Emmanuel Macron. President-elect Donald Trump, who is not there with his wife, Melania Trump. He's there by himself, and so he'll be greeted.
Which is interesting in itself, because Melania Trump, of course, is a devout Catholic.
Exactly, and she, of course, had been to Paris the previous times while he was in office, and she was said to have an actually pretty close relationship with Brigitte Macron. They actually got along very well, and a quick note of trivia as we see the two men embracing once again. A more normal handshake, I have to say, compared to what happened at the Élysée earlier. But a quick note on the meeting between the two first ladies at the time was that there was this anecdote that apparently Donald Trump, when he left the two first ladies to go have his meeting with Emmanuel Macron, told them, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to go shopping? And they actually went in part to see a relic from I think it was from Notre-Dame, but a religious relic, because that was something that the U.S. First Lady was very interested in. And so they did a much more cultural sort of afternoon than what the U.S. President at the time thought they were going to be doing.
I don't know if it was supposed to be a nail of the cross.
It was a nail of the cross.
Supposedly.
Can we pick up, I'm not sure we can pick up microphones at this point, but it would be very interesting because they are, in conversation right now. And so Donald Trump making sure that he is the last to go in. So to remind you, there are two ceremonies tonight. There's a secular ceremony first, which will see a tribute to the first responders, the firefighters, those who rebuilt the cathedral. We will hear from President Macron, a personal tribute. World eyes upon him. As I said, an interesting time, the government having fallen this week. Very much a legacy moment for him tonight. Then we will see the religious ceremony begin, the reawakening of the grand organ. We just heard Jean Duchesne talking about it. It survived the fire, completely contaminated by lead, and needed to be cleaned and reassembled. But before all of that, due in the next, minute or so, in theory, we will see this significant moment, the actual opening of the doors. Remind us about this moment we're about to see. Jean Duchesne.
Well, what do you mean?
The reopening of the door. So we will see, am I right to say,
yes,
the Archbishop Laurent Ulrich
knocking at the door.
Knocking at the door.
3 times.
3 times. And shouting to, literally, Our Lady.
Yes. And then there will be answers from inside with Psalm 121.
The Cantique, The Cantique,
yes.
121.
We are seeing these are beautiful images, as you're talking, Jean, of the Eiffel Tower, dazzling as it is. 7 o'clock here, live in the evening on France 24. For the next every hour, for the first 10 minutes. Eiffel
I can tell you
Tower
that this is
dazzled.
something that is rather unusual, and the Archbishop, I think, went there yesterday or the day before just to practice.
Ah, really?
Yes.
But to make sure the staff, because also worth saying, when he uses the crozier, this symbolic staff,
Yes.
he's not trying to break through the door, and people might be familiar with, say, Black Rod in the UK and Parliament. This is a knock to symbolise...
He's not going to use it as a ram.
No. This is not a Robespierre moment.
No. It's just the tradition of just knocking at the door, asking to be let in.
Let's go to Clovis Caselli,
to be
our correspondent, outside the cathedral. Clovis, we are waiting for a particular special moment right now.
And let me give you a little insight behind the scenes. When Donald Trump arrived, we saw a lot more security than for other heads of state. The Elysee had warned that that was a possibility. And when Donald Trump arrived and embraced Emmanuel Macron, well, in the crowd, I heard someone sing the American national anthem earlier. When Volodymyr Zelensky arrived and we saw him on the giant screens, people here in the crowd started clapping spontaneously for the president of Ukraine. And also inside the cathedral, when he arrived, he was greeted by heads of state. Some clapped also for the Ukrainian president entering. Donald Trump, as the Elysee told us, would be the last head of state arriving at the Notre-Dame Cathedral. This before the extremely important symbolic moment when the Archbishop of Paris, Laurent Ulrich, knocks on the doors of Notre-Dame with the bishop's staff made from wood that was collected after the fire. And that, of course, is a strong symbol, of course. And then, as you mentioned, there will be a secular ceremony, the Republican ceremony, as we're calling it here in France, with the French president making a speech. Before that film showing the achievements, paying tribute to the firefighters, those who helped restore Notre-Dame. Also an important moment because they're from the civil society. They really played a key role in enabling this enterprise to take place, this incredible 5-year-long restoring of Notre-Dame. For our viewers, 5 years, a little over 5 years, is nothing when you talk to those who are involved. They were working day and night. You were mentioning the organ. To tune the organ, those who were involved were working at night to be in perfect silence and also to be able to allow the craftsmen and women to work during the day tirelessly, day and night. People have been working for the past 5 years to make sure that this moment happens here, Notre-Dame reopening its doors just in time in 2024.
Very interesting, because as we're talking, we're watching what almost you could be forgiven for thinking it was President-elect Trump doing the meet and greeting, going through leaders as he takes his seat in the centre next to Emmanuel Macron. And also, not quite the last. The last person we've seen going in, or at least up to this stage, is none other than Elon Musk. Bertrand, very interesting last-minute arrival.
Yes, very much so. Even he seems to be more a man of the future in a cathedral that symbolize the eternity of the past. But it's definitely against protocol, I might say. Are you surprised that he's arriving last?
Well, we're watching. There's still more cars coming. We're just very interesting as we're watching the Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili.
Jill Biden's not here yet.
And of course, we're waiting for Jill Biden. This could be the closest right now, couldn't it?
Jill Biden.
Just tell me what you make of the dynamics right now, Ketivan, what you're seeing, the conversations, the brief handshakes that we've just been watching with Donald Trump there.
Well, I think all the leaders understand, especially the European leaders, especially Volodymyr Zelensky, that and Emmanuel Macron, the first one of them, is that at some point you're going to have to work with probably the most powerful man on the planet in about a month and a half. And so you need to understand the personality of these leaders, and they all know how Donald Trump works. And Donald Trump likes to have the reverence of some of those leaders, and they know that they need to cultivate their relationship, their personal relationships with Donald Trump. That's why you saw Vladimir Zelensky, who at one point was a little bit critical of Donald Trump, but the minute Donald Trump was elected, he, like Emmanuel Macron, were very quick to congratulate Donald Trump, to talk about working with the future U.S. president, because a lot, especially for the Ukrainian president, is riding on his good relationship with Donald Trump.
So perhaps, as protocol, the Republican protocol dictates, as we watch Elon Musk amongst the crowd having selfies here, and very interesting even watching Rachida Data, the outgoing culture minister in France. There's a kind of, these people who were used to paparazzi following them, almost looks a starstruck moment. Let's see, as we watch the FLOTUS, the First Lady of the US leaving, and the last person to arrive, Jill Biden. So we will see the opening of the doors in a moment. Very interesting, Jean, the fact that we haven't seen much of Archbishop Laurent Ulrich at this stage. This is very much a political spectacle so far.
For the time being, yes. Well, but this is just, I would say, the starters.
The hors d'oeuvre.
The main course is to come. It's still to come. At a good restaurant, they keep you waiting.
But of course, this has enchanted the Americans, this story, because it's very easy to look at it as a building and think, OK, this is a cathedral back on its feet. But it's, as Bertrand, you were just saying a moment ago, it's become the stuff of legends, not only this fabric within society. It represented, I think I'd be right in saying, there's so much difficulties in the world, so many problems within the world. And when you put people together to bring about hope, to restore something for a greater good in the same style as it was envisaged, and even more clearly with taking off the dust of, 850 years. I think Emmanuel Macron, the president, probably worded it well, didn't he, when he said just a week ago, this is the construction site of the century, the chantier du siècle, and you, to the workmen and women, have managed to turn ashes to artistry.
Yeah, that was a very interesting moment, knowing that there was a whole history of alchemy in building cathedrals and turning lead into gold. So it was clearly, I think it was even more powerful to say that these men and women have changed dust into art and art history. We will do our best to keep the passion and the enthusiasm for Notre Dame. The Americans are especially passionate about Notre Dame. I believe they are the nation that has donated the most to the reconstruction of the cathedral. The cathedral was to be restored before the fire started. It would have cost much less money, but the result would not have been the same. But I think it was also after a tour that the Parisian clergy made across the US to receive donations. So there's clearly a link to this past that belongs not just to the French, but to the world.
I think, Bertrand, we might be able to hear sound now of, this is the largest bell, this is Emmanuel, perhaps aptly named, but this goes back to the days, I think, was blessed by the Sun King Louis XIV himself. It sounds in F sharp, I believe, as well, and is ringing tonight. Let's see if we can hear.
See, so what we have seen so far is just the owner, the state.
So you're watching France 24, you're seeing the pealing of the bell of Notre-Dame, a manual dating back to the 16th century, and the Sun King, blessed personally by Louis XIV, that managed to survive the fire of 5 years ago, make it through, well, centuries of history. And this is, well, when we look at the situation, Jean, we're looking at one of the heaviest bells in the world. I believe it's nearly up to 500 kilograms, 2.5 meters wide. This is a feat in itself.
Yes, it is really they're exceptional. They're among the biggest in the world, and and actually they had been renewed. They were renewed less than 10 years ago, before the fire, and there was already with a great help from American donors.
Okay, let's see the moment of the opening of the doors, of the portals. This is the Archbishop Laurent Ulrich. I'm going to hear a call and response moment.
Yes, you can see there are several bishops. You can see the mitres. So there are several bishops, all the bishops of the
them.
I want you to say this when because they've cut mics for this bit, but once we come back, I'd like you to say that. I like that.
Yeah. Didn't he say, I never lost them?
Frères et sœurs, entrons maintenant dans Notre-Dame. C'est elle qui nous rassemble. C'est elle que nous aimons. C'est elle qui nous accompagne sur notre chemin vers le Père. Source de toute vie, par Jésus-Christ, lumière née de la lumière, dans la force de l'Esprit Saint, consolateur. Notre-Dame, modèle de la foi, ouvre tes portes pour rassembler dans la joie les enfants de Dieu dispersés. Notre-Dame, Mère très aimante, ouvre tes portes pour nous aider à chercher l'amour et la vérité, la justice et la paix. Notre-Dame, témoin de l'espérance, ouvre tes portes pour que brille sur nos vies la lumière de la miséricorde et que resplendisse à nos yeux la victoire de la résurrection.
We're watching live images inside Notre-Dame, and this is part of the service as we enter the transition from silence to praise, the transition from darkness to light, the transition from absence to presence. And we're watching the Archbishop of Paris, Laurent Ulrich, guiding, and followed by President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and the First Lady, Brigitte Macron, and also Anne Hidalgo, the Mayor of Paris. And we will see in a minute, before we go into the religious part of the ceremony, we will see a film dedicated to more than 100 firefighters, first responders, and they will also process, there'll be a short procession through the cathedral as well of those who, well, stopped what could have been the complete ruin of Notre-Dame.
It was very, very near to happen. The collapse of the cathedral. They stopped the fire getting into the bells we saw. If that had happened.
You're watching incredible images live on France 24, the reopening of Notre-Dame as we speak, and a poignant moment as well. I'm going to bring in Jean de Chêne. We're going to watch in a moment the video of the firefighters, the rescue, but we saw briefly there the crown of thorns. This is at the top of the cathedral, that is the relic of the crown of thorns that are still within Notre-Dame.
King St. Louis in the 13th century, and it is the most precious relic of the cathedral, and now it's going to be exhibited again, and it will be accessible to the general public for veneration, of course.
Let's listen across as we hear the tributes as part of this video of what happened 5 years ago.
iconic landmark, and now it's gone-ish, and it's very upsetting to hear.
It's shocking, absolutely shocking.
Comment ils vont rebâtir, comment ils vont redonner cette touche très, très ancienne à cette pièce vraiment incroyable.
Bonjour à tous. Reconstruire, c'est donc le mot du jour.
5 ans pour reconstruire Notre-Dame, c'est le délai très court annoncé hier soir à la télévision par le chef de l'État.
J'ai décidé de donner un horizon court parce que j'étais convaincu que c'est ce qui permettrait d'abord d'avoir un résultat et ensuite de donner une espérance à l'échelle humaine.
On s'est dit qu'on n'y arriverait jamais. C'était vraiment sportif.
Il a fallu cet incendie qui a fait craindre d'être définitivement privé de ce monument pour mesurer l'attachement qu'on avait pour lui.
C'est hors norme par les quantités de matériel, c'est hors norme par le nombre de compagnons sur le chantier. Tout est hors norme dans ce chantier. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il vous faut des personnes hors normes pour faire ça. Voilà.
Toujours la même histoire, il faut mettre les gens ensemble, les faire travailler ensemble et les diriger vers un objectif commun.
On a les savoir-faire, on a les compétences.
Notre-Dame de Paris, c'est des métiers, des métiers, des métiers. Et ça fait tout ce dont est capable l'humanité lorsqu'elle a décidé de faire du beau.
Pour les amoureux du patrimoine, c'est avant tout une œuvre qui est essentielle à transmettre aux générations futures, parce que ça fait partie de notre histoire commune.
Il y avait une logique de transmission du savoir qui est assez incroyable. Et d'ailleurs, ce chantier, c'est le chantier de la transmission par excellence.
On a montré, je pense, au monde entier qu'on n'avait pas perdu nos savoir-faire.
On espère vraiment que les architectes n'ont pas cru que c'était un timing normal. On a vraiment réussi à répondre aux problématiques de temps et de qualité, mais parce que c'était une fois l'effort de guerre, une fois.
On est passé de la nuit à la lumière.
Jamais la cathédrale n'aura resplendi à ce point.
On retrouve cette belle silhouette qui nous a manqué pendant 5 ans.
You can hear the applause this evening because in a moment we're about to see the procession of all of the first responders and all of the firefighters that came out through the day into the evening battling, as we just heard, to prevent it being completely gutted by morning. It was by midnight that they'd stopped. Some incredible stories, including Our Lady, the Virgin Mary, the Virgin and Child. According to the firefighters, one of the beams landed just in front of the Virgin and Child. There's no damage. There was, however, the lead contamination affected much of the building, but that has been restored. We saw just a few weeks ago, as we watch the huge illuminated nursery, the Virgin and Child, this moment, 3,000 people watched as she was taken from a cathedral, a church, very close to the Louvre, processed through Paris and brought back here after 5 years to Notre-Dame. So we will see the parade here with the first responders and the firefighters being applauded by world leaders. Jean Duchesne, this is an incredible moment for those people that stopped something, well, yes. A catastrophe.
Yes, I mean, because they didn't have to, I mean, they risked their lives to save the cathedral and to help other people keep hope, to help other people find something to refer to, something to believe in. And that's why this applause is really fully deserved. And it's a good thing that all those people should be recognized, acknowledged, and congratulated in front of the best and most powerful in the world.
And I mentioned as well someone who can't be here, which was General Jean-Marie Georgelin, this five-star general brought in to essentially make sure this was military precision, military timing. He died while walking in the Pyrenees 2 years ago, but President Macron has written his name into the wood of the spire.
You know, General Georgelin, I met him several times, and he was certainly a remarkable man, a real soldier. I mean, you see, and this is the church has discovered that soldiers can be very useful after wars. Simply because of their leadership and also managerial talents. It was also the case during World Youth Day 97. Colonel Lustiger then hired General Morillon, who had commanded the French forces in Serbia.
But these people, Bertrand, it's worth saying as well, risking their lives to stop the major parts of the structure completely being destroyed. Amidst the huge plumes of smoke, we all saw the yellowing, which was the lead in the air from the roof as well, which is clearly toxic. And I think people had to have tests afterwards to work out whether the public had been contaminated. But it turned out, this incredible story, that the lead fell to the ground after evaporating, and it was still on the ground afterwards.
Yeah, we're still on the ground. We're still across the city. But back to the firefighters, 'cause what we saw as the public was the firefighters outside the cathedral, throwing the water, trying not to break the stained glass. But what we didn't see is the ones who volunteered into climbing the stairs to get into the belfry, the bell tower, which is where the core of the battle against the fire happened. And that is what was what changed the day and changed our lives in a way. And I think it's also to these ones at first, and then to all the ones who have worked on the reconstruction, that all these grateful words are on the cathedral.
And I think in many ways, Ketavan, this, alongside the 2,000 or so craftsmen and women who rebuilt this is the heart of the service right now.
Yes, because you're seeing all these dignitaries standing up to give a standing ovation to the people who saved the cathedral, who made this day possible, because they managed to keep enough of the structure and of the cathedral alive, if you will, for it to be reconstructed. And that standing ovation by dignitaries for these first responders is a pretty significant moment.
Was it the violins strike?
Les frères Capuçon, the brothers Capuçon, I can't remember their first names, but
Gauthier,
both...
Renaud et Gauthier.
Renaud et Gauthier, one violinist.
And this is the reliquary for the crown of spine. It was designed by the jeweler Sylvain Dubuisson.
The same one with the crozier.
You can see in the middle, you can catch a glimpse of the main altar, which will be consecrated tomorrow only.
Let's take a listen. You're watching France 24. We're seeing the brothers Capuçon, the cellist and violin, French famous duo, as we wait for President Macron, who's about to speak and pay tribute, and just to see the colours within the cathedral, the dust gone, the dirt gone, the ashes gone. Even when we look at the images of the stained glass windows, just listening, Jean, to some of the people, the artisans, saying that they couldn't use the same colours. Even some of the chambers, we see the blues, the golds, that all of the material that was done back in the 1800s by Eugène Villers-le-Duc.
Yes.
They've used basically reusable paint. It's very different, but it's incredibly beautiful.
Yes, it was an incredible restoration. And it was something that was virtually, totally invisible before. It was, you could not see it. And in a way, we're going to discover a new cathedral. And it is going to be a source of amazement and wonder.
Let's hear from President Macron.
Je me tiens devant vous avant que ne commence la liturgie.
I stand here in front of you
Pour vous dire la gratitude
before the liturgical event begins to express the gratitude of the French nation. A gratitude to all those who saved, who rescued, who helped and rebuilt Our Lady of Paris, Notre-Dame de Paris. Our gratitude towards all those that are present at this time when we are about to give it back to the Catholics, back to Paris, back to France and back to the whole world. Yes, indeed, today once again the bells of Notre-Dame ring out again. And soon the grand organ will too. This is a music of hope, familiar to Parisians, to France and the world. The bells of Notre-Dame ring out again. The bells that rang out, the hours of the day and those of history. They ring as they rang for the 11 kings that saw this cathedral stand tall, for Saint Louis, who came back from the Orient, for Henri IV, who was making the nation better after the wars of religion, for Louis XIV, for Louis XVI, for Napoleon, who crowned himself emperor here himself in 1804, for Victor Hugo, who stood here dreaming up looking for the shadow of Quasimodo in the cloisters, for Paul Claudel, who came back here for hope an evening of 1966 to tell the residents of Paris about the coming of General de Clerc in Paris, as de Gaulle bid farewell to the great men of history. Yes, these bells ring out. They accompanied our history. However, we may have never heard these voices ring out again. On the 15th of April, 2019, news of the fire ran through the city and the world. The image of fire going through the transept, the image of this spire collapsing in a sound of broken bones. And anything could have been destroyed at that moment. The wood, the stones, the stained glass could have disappeared at that moment. During those hours, there were students who came down from the Sainte-Geneviève hill nearby in order to sing songs. And people stood in Times Square in front of the images of this fire in tears. And people came from all around the world to meet in front of our embassies. Camel herders from the Niger who came and prayed for Notre-Dame in their own faith. On that evening was a moment of tragedy that pushed the fires to the northern belfry. Some people will put this down to providence, hope, or accident, but above everything else, there was bravery that day. The bravery of those firefighters and their leaders who sent them for a last attempt that was more dangerous than the previous ones. These men who climbed up the facade in order to stop the 16 bells from collapsing and pulling down the entire cathedral with them. At 2200 hours, 47, at 10:47, this message was sent out that the firefighters had taken their advantage and that there were no deaths that night. Towards midnight, we opened the large door, the large gate. The spire was there no longer. The transept had collapsed, and the flows of water were dripping everywhere, flowing everywhere. There was a smell, an acrid smell, and the cross and the Pietà was lying there, but the Virgin was standing there intact, untouched, immaculate, just a few meters away from the collapsed spire of the cathedral. Notre-Dame of Paris, Our Lady of Paris, was saved, disfigured, yes, but rescued by the bravery and the courage of these men. And so this is when these minutes started ticking, when anything could have changed. We could have given into sadness and desolation of never seeing the cathedral as it had stood before. And then the shock of realizing that Notre-Dame of Paris could disappear, and realizing as well that our very cathedrals are mortal. And so we decided to hope. We decided to follow our willpower. We decided to rebuild Notre-Dame of Paris more beautiful than it was before in 5 years. We fought back thanks to our will and thanks to an unprecedented fraternity. We managed to carry this out, a fraternity that brought together people on all continents, people from all countries and all classes, who were brought together by these walls. The fraternity as well of the different artisans and companions here who met to work here under the direction of General Georges Rollin, for whose memory I spare a thought today, a moved thought. There was this fraternity of the scaffolding workers, the electricians, the lumberjacks, the woodworkers, the stone masons, the founders, the locksmiths, the polishers, all the artisans working the page, sculptors, the restorers of sculptures and paintings, the glass-working masters, archaeologists, engineers, researchers, historians, conservators, art historians, architects, and so many other professions besides. Yes, these women and these men, over 5,000 of them over the course of the last 5 years, added their name to the long list of those who since the 13th century had built this cathedral, rebuilding the forest of Notre-Dame, this forest of 2,000 oak beams, and then rebuilding the spire as well as an identical copy of the one that had been there before. And this showed that we still had the will of building grand designs and being able to preserve and continue the legends that had been passed down through the centuries. And so for 5 years, all these men and women was a necessary actor of this rebuilding of the cathedral. We needed these efforts coming from all around the world. Every gesture was necessary, and it brought together the grandeur of this cathedral and the excellence of all these jobs. We rediscovered what great nations could do, that they could make the impossible come true. This cathedral thus became the metaphor, the happy metaphor of what a nation is and what the world should be. A fraternity, a solidarity of people who are determined to make something bigger than themselves, a universal fraternity and helping each other. Notre-Dame tells us that our dreams, even the most ambitious and audacious ones, are only possible thanks to the commitment of each and every one of us. This cathedral reminds us that we have inherited a past that is greater than us and that could disappear any day, and that we are the players, the actors of an era that has to be transmitted to further down the line. Our cathedral speaks of transcendence and helps us live and inhabit this world. It allows us to transmit and hope. This is the meaning of the work that was carried out here in our presence here this evening. We, as well, add our name to this long list of builders, and we reveal ourselves in the face of adversity. The bells have rung out. The pipe organ will awaken soon, and the faithful will also follow and come and pray here. The world will find this cathedral rebuilt and built more beautiful and embellished. And we will have to remember this lesson of fragility, humility, and of our strong willpower. And we should never forget how each one of us counts and how the grandeur of this capital is inseparable from the efforts of each and every one of us. Today, together, we can share the joy and the pride.
Monseigneur, Notre-Dame de Paris vous est redonnée.
Your Excellency, the Archbishop, tonight the Notre-Dame de Paris is given back to you.
Vive Notre-Dame de Paris.
Thank you. Long live Notre-Dame of Paris. Long live the Republic. Long live France.
So on the reopening of Notre-Dame, 5 years since President Macron said we need this fixed, and many didn't believe. A speech tonight in which he said Our Lady of Paris was saved. Disfigured, yes, but saved. He said the shock of realizing that Notre-Dame of Paris could disappear, that it was immortal. We fought back thanks to our will, our unprecedented fraternity. And he went on to say, this cathedral and the rebuild has become a metaphor, he said, for what the world could and should be, a lesson of humility, fragility, and a strong willpower. Never forget about how many of us count. So let's go to Clovis Caselli. Outside the cathedral, there are thousands of people watching on. In fact, we'll go to Clovis in just a minute. I want to just go first to Bertrand at Allemagne. Just your thoughts on watching that.
First of all, it's very moving as a guide, I usually tell the past, what happened. It's quite moving to be watching history as it happens. I think it's also great to see Notre-Dame used for a joyful moment. In the past years, Notre-Dame was the receptacle of the nation's sorrow, either after the Paris attacks of 2015 or funerals, and Notre-Dame is a place also of hope and of celebrating the joy, here also the pride of the nation, and I'm very grateful to be alive today to see that.
Let's go outside to Notre-Dame. Amongst those watching on, those who just wanted to be part of the scene tonight, Clovis Caselli is there. Clovis, bring us up to date. What is the atmosphere like around you tonight?
It's a very moving moment for everybody here around Notre-Dame. I can tell you that tens of thousands of people who've gathered along the banks of the Seine are in silence. Silent when they were listening to the speech of Emmanuel Macron. Silent now as they see pictures of the ceremony inside Notre-Dame with the music we can all hear. It's a beautiful moment for everybody present here. I'll also remember when the firemen walked into the cathedral and were cheered, clapped by the heads of state inside the cathedral behind me. But I can tell you outside, same images with people expressing them also the gratitude to those who saved Notre-Dame, those who are battling the flames, the fire, brave firemen, and who managed to prevent those 16 bells behind me from tumbling, from falling with the fire in the inferno, and preventing the two towers from collapsing, and that would have destroyed entirely Notre-Dame. But those firemen managed to save the cathedral, and the people here, I can tell you, are very grateful for that. One last word maybe on the speech of Emmanuel Macron. Important, of course, to highlight that he started by expressing gratitude. And another word that came back constantly is fraternity. You know that here in France, liberté, égalité, fraternité is our motto, three very important words. And Emmanuel Macron said that it was also universal fraternity, and he thanked all those in France and around the world who helped donate, who helped in their own way help save Notre-Dame and help it be restored the way it is, even more beautiful than before, he said.
Clovis, thank you. We're about to see in a moment the reawakening of the grand organ that survived the fire. It was completely contaminated by lead, had to be cleaned and reassembled. We are seeing Jean de Seine, Special Advisor to Archbishop of Paris. This is a moment where we're seeing all of the banners, more than 113 banners, all of the parishes, the Diocese of Paris, aren't we?
So this means actually that the Church of Paris is actually taking possession of its cathedral. So there's one banner for each of the 113 parishes in Paris. Each of them is carried by a parishioner. And so this means that the whole Church of Paris is re-entering, reappropriating its cathedral.
So we're now
there's another very important detail, which perhaps may not have been noted. You will perhaps note that the pulpit from which Mr. Macron spoke has disappeared.
Well, to the important point, if you were joining us here on France 24 late, you will see that you were talking a moment ago about how to split the Republican service from the religious service. Emmanuel Macron had to be put in a very special part of the cathedral.
Originally, he was to speak outside, but the weather did not allow him to speak outside because of the wind and rain. So they built a special provisional pulpit at the foot of the central podium for the president to speak, because actually he was just the owner paying a visit and not a member of the clergy serving the cathedral and the people.
I want to go to Andrew Yarrow, author, historian, former speechwriter for the Clinton administration, who's watching these events with us. We're about to hear the reawakening of the organ in a moment, Andrew, but just bring us your thoughts on what we're seeing.
Well, Gavin, this was such a moving ceremony. I just had goosebumps hearing the choir, seeing the cathedral doors open. But this is also such an important night for Emmanuel Macron. Here, Macron needed to show that France could achieve a great work, and it did. Macron has had a terrible last couple of months politically, and his inviting Donald Trump here, the president-elect, he needs several things from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has threatened on several occasions to pull the United States out of NATO or to reduce American commitments to NATO. Donald Trump has wavered in his support for Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky during the Ukraine war. Emmanuel Macron needs to bring the two together, needs to effect a peace. I mean, I think back to the early days of the war, and Macron tried to effect a ceasefire by talking with Vladimir Putin. Very unsuccessful effort. You know, if he can pull something off tonight, And in the aftermath tonight, that would be very important. But also with Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump has threatened putting tariffs on the European Union, putting tariffs on goods from all over the world. And, you know, Macron really is speaking for Europe, is speaking for the EU tonight as the de facto leader of the EU in saying, you know, we need America, we need a Trump administration to not cripple Europe, to hurt Europe economically with tariffs. So an important night for Emmanuel Macron.
We are watching, thank you Andrew, we are watching the Archbishop, Laurent Ulrich, about to see the moment where he reawakens and calls to the organ, the three tenors of the organ. I mentioned a moment ago Olivier Latry, who is in his early 60s, who is one of the, well, he's the master organist who has been within the cathedral as a musician there since his early 20s. He spoke to reporters about how he felt lost, homeless, travelling the world, and saying also the sound we will hear in a moment, Jean de Chêne, it will probably take about 5 years for the organ to sound how it did, the reverberations within the cathedral, because of the dust and debris that's disappeared and the difference that made.
Yes, it had to be entirely cleaned up, you know, and in every single tube and pipe, and this took all 5 years. It was narrowly finished, and of course this is going to be something very special because well, the organ now is a music instrument that is found in churches mostly, and especially in cathedrals. So this one is especially beautiful and powerful and amazingly beautiful. What has to be noticed is that the sound of the organ is served by the architecture of the cathedral itself, because the sound reverberates and sort of rebounds against the curved walls and at the cross of the transept. Another interesting artistic detail, people may wonder at the strange chasuble that Archbishop Ulrich is wearing. So it's been designed by a famous French fashion designer, Jean-Charles de Castelbazac.
Yes, who designed for many famous stars. Let's listen to the Archbishop Laurent Ulrich.
It's modern, even contemporary art.
Monsieur le Président, permettez que je vous remercie de ces mots et de ceux de la semaine dernière qui traduisent votre reconnaissance
which show your recognition to all those who managed to save this edifice at the time of the fire, the firefighters of Paris under General Gallet, as well as all those who worked on this incredible work site, the 250 enterprises, companies, the various foundations, public foundations and organizations under the responsibility of Philippe Jost, as well as the teams in the team under Monseigneur Philippe Dumas. All of them worked with permanent and effort. And we know what the Church and France owes all of you, your presence in the cathedral at a time when it had been inflicted a wound so deep on that evening of the 15th of April 2019. You immediately decided to nominate a special delegate for rebuilding the edifice in the person of General Georges Rollin, whose memory remains very much alive for us. You made a promise to Paris to which you were the only one to believe at the time to obtain this result within only 5 years. The creation of a public establishment whose only mission was rebuilding Notre-Dame of Paris. And you gave so much attention to this worksite by visiting it regularly, not on the anniversary date of the of the fire, as well as the anticipated anniversary of the reopening just a year ago. And you invited people from around the world here to bear witness to this happy moment. And everyone here knows what we owe to the philanthropists who generously supported this reconstruction, as well as to the thousands of donators. This huge generosity is an outstanding sign and manifests a desire to participate in the beauty of humanity. And the generosity of those who are perhaps the most modest shows the will to want to work in this edifice. Gratefully, our world is covered by a great fraternity which does not succumb just to particular interests. And now, with you and all our guests this evening in this cathedral, which once again shines with light in this city, and on the screens at home or on the streets of Paris, you will now hear a hymn to God being sung. The great organ of our cathedral, that was completely renovated during these 5 years, will show its prowess of being able to translate all the feelings of the Christian faith for the great work of God, the work of its freedom, its strong and loving will. His Excellency the Nonce received a message from Pope Francis, His Holiness Pope Francis, that he will read to us. To His Excellence Laurent Ulrich, the Archbishop of Paris, I am very happy to join with you in thoughts and in prayer, as well as to the faithful who are gathered there on this solemn day on which your cathedral opens its doors again. We all remember the terrible fire that 5 years ago ripped through this edifice, and our hearts wept at seeing such a hallmark of Christian art possibly disappear. But today that sadness is replaced with joy and happiness. I'd like to commend all of those, especially the firefighters, who courageously tried to save this historical monument from destruction. I'd like to commend the determination of the public services, as well as to the international generosity which contributed to the renovation. This shows not only our attachment to art and history, but more than that, and this is very encouraging, a sign that our symbolic and sacred values, embodied in a large edifice like this, is still perceived by people all over. I would also like to commend the remarkable work of the various craftsmen, artisans, workers who gave the best of themselves in order to give back to Notre-Dame its splendor. It's reassuring to see that the know-how of ancient times was kept over the years and improved, and a number of workers and artisans stated that they had lived this adventure of restoration as something that was truly spiritual. It made them follow the footsteps of their fathers, working in a place where nothing profane, unintelligible, or vulgar has its place. We built a prophetic sign in this cathedral of a sign of the renewal of our religion in France. I would like to tell all those who are baptized that they can feel true pride in this building, in the heritage of their faith. Dear inhabitants of Paris and France, the world in which, in whose heaven God lives, is your world. And those who preceded you on the road to faith passed it down to you. This is a symbol that encapsulates your destiny to guide you to the meeting with God and the discovery of His great love. Apart from that, Notre-Dame will once again be visited and admired by a huge crowd of people coming from all different countries, cultures, languages, and believers of all faiths, who are all looking for this symbolic meaning in their lives. I know, Your Excellency, that its doors will be wide open to them, and that you will know how to generously welcome them here without charging them a fee, as brothers and sisters, as a testimony of the Christian community. Let all those be able to see the joy that we have of loving our Lord, a Lord made, a God made of compassion, tenderness, and love. Let us be able to share our hope by imploring the Church of France and the French people to protect Notre-Dame of Paris. And thus I'd like to give to you, Your Excellency, and to all those present my benediction. Francis.
Au nom du Père et du Fils et du Saint-Esprit.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Soit avec vous.
May peace be with you and with the Holy Spirit.
Aujourd'hui, elle retrouve la présence de ceux et celles qu'elle rassemble.
Our Lady knew absence, and now it is seeing the presence of those that have brought together here. She had gone through darkness, and now she knows light again. She experienced silence, and she now rediscovers the joys of song and music, the joys of these prayers that are sent to God. And that is why I will now ask God to consecrate this organ that sings, carries our prayers and sings the glory of God.
Seigneur notre Dieu, beauté toujours ancienne et toujours nouvelle, ta sagesse garde l'univers dans l'harmonie, ta grâce donne à la terre sa beauté. À toi la louange incessante du chœur des anges qui contemplent la splendeur de ta face. À toi le chant des étoiles dans leur course régulière à travers l'univers. À toi l'acclamation unanime des rachetés qui te chantent, Dieu saint, dans leur cœur, de leurs lèvres, par leur vie. Nous aussi, ton peuple saint rassemblé dans cette cathédrale, nous voulons joindre nos voix à ce concert universel.
We, the people who join together here in this cathedral, want to join our voice to your universal song, and so this song that rises up to you, God, so that it can be worthy of your love, we ask you to consecrate this organ, to bless it, so that our hearts can sing to you in the Holy Spirit. In the name of Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Éveille-toi, orgue, instrument sacré, entonne la louange de Dieu, notre Créateur et notre Père. Orgue, instrument sacré, célèbre Jésus notre Seigneur, mort et ressuscité pour nous.
To explain what we're seeing right now, we're seeing the Archbishop and invoking the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. We're seeing a back and forth dialogue, the rebirth, again, not just of the cathedral, but of the organ.
Orgue, instrument sacré, élève nos chants.
We will see three tenured members of the gallery, the organ gallery, Olivier Latry, Vincent Dubois, Thierry Echec, and the assistant permanent member, Thibaut Fajol. Jean, a quick word before we hear the response from the organ of what we're seeing.
Well, actually, the organ could not work, of course, after the fire, and so there were four organ players, official organ players, and so two of them were not kept eventually because they had reached the age of retirement. So the cathedral hired, if I dare say, or rather appointed, two new performers. So one was actually unchallenged, was Thierry Echec, who was a respected organ player, a member of the French Institute of the Fine Arts, and also there's a more controversial appointment, that of Thibaut Fajol, a very young organ player. He's in his early 20s, but we have just been able to hear him, and so we can appreciate whether he deserves such a glorious position.
Controversial, why? Because of his age?
Yes. And lack of experience, of course.
And we're seeing in the crowd enjoying it Jill Biden, the First Lady, along with Ashley Biden, their daughter.
So there are going to be 8 questions or call from the Archbishop and answers from the organs, I suppose 2 by each of the 4 organ players.
And briefly, we should say as we listen in, we will hear improvised responses to each of the invocations. Okay.
Instrument sacré, fais entrer l'assemblée des fidèles dans l'action de grâce du Christ.
As we're watching these beautiful images, these invocations of the Archbishop, a back and forth process, 8 times with the organists, 4 of them who will play improvised response, praising the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. One thing that strikes me, just as we watch this, Jean Duchesne, one thing, if you look around, the celebrities, the world leaders, the firefighters, rescuers, don't you see amongst the service a single mobile phone?
That's true. There's something else that's worth pointing out. It is the Golden Cross which you can see at the bottom of the cathedral, just on the other end, opposite the organ. It is a modern cross. It was installed in the 1990s by Cardinal Lustiger, and it was the work of the artist Marc Couturier. Because, strangely enough, until then, there was no visible cross in the cathedral.
Something else you mentioned a moment ago, and Bertrand, I'm interested in your take on this as well. When the cameras are in front of you, in the midst of the service, a celebration service, it's part Republican, part religious. For world leaders, you have, I think, Jean, you said there's two choices, to look interested or to look bored.
I think I saw a third option, which was to fall asleep, but I don't want to point names. But yes, it matches with what you said. No one is on their phone. No one is. I think they all understand that this is a very unique moment, and maybe that's the power of Notre-Dame. I saw that on the thousands of tours I've given there. Is people don't walk in Notre-Dame as they walk in the Louvre or in Versailles, etc. They're struck by a presence, or you may call it the way you want, but there's something that captivates the soul of visitors, regardless their religion or their views on religion. There is some kinds of vibrations, and even more so with the organ. But even when you walk in the cathedral and it's silent, you feel the thousands of generations who have worshipped but also admired and be enchanted by visiting the monument. So I think that's could be what's working in front of our eyes right now.
There's a few things of note if you're watching this, and you mentioned a moment ago, Bertrand, as people caught yawning, and you're catching world leaders going through the religious part of the ceremony. We're watching the Archbishop giving these invocations to the organs continuously, and an improvisation coming back. This, as you mentioned a moment ago, Bertrand, the organs of the cathedral, and yet you look behind it, you have this spectacle. Jean Duchesne, the rose window beautifully restored back in place.
Yes, it is the oldest of the three rose windows. Actually, during the fire, I was especially afraid the north rose window might collapse, because the wall was not supported by, there were no more buttresses, the wall was not standing, and I was afraid it would collapse. Eventually, it did not. But this is certainly a unique series of three exceptional roses. The oldest one is the one at the back, or on the front of the cathedral, behind the organ. But the other two, I mean, you can sit there and spend hours with binoculars, identifying and trying to understand all the details. Because none of this has been done at random. There always was an idea, an inspiration. And the idea is not to send a message. There is no proselytism. It is just an effort to understand something.
We have parables within the frame, within the stained glass. The other point
was to understand, not to indoctrinate.
We saw a moment ago, and you mentioned this, it's hard not to, well, not notice it. We saw the Archduke's, the cloak, the Archbishop's cloak, what's called a cope. It's kind of like a Mondrian painting, the colours of it. You talked about the designers, Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, designed to the stars, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Andy Warhol, Elena Christiansen, and he said he wanted the fragments on it, these bright, beautiful colours, to reflect the stained glass.
Yes. You see, the colours, it's kind of the same blue, the same red, the same yellow also as the colours, so that there is a kind of unity. Even if now you see it is typical of our simplifications that we want large splashes, batches of colors, and we don't want things to be too subtle. We want it to be plain and evident.
Let me go through some of the colours that we're seeing. This is Diana Castillo, a team owner of the painting restorers, said we will see within the 24 chapels and beyond some of the paintwork, as you can see, the creams, the beige. The idea of, to the original stone was to keep a building that was calm. You could feel that you could breathe to reflect. But within that, she described almond greens, pruning Bordeaux, cobalt blue, ultramarine, different hues of yellow, very pure red, cadmium, and chestnut leaves as well. When you're taking people round here, Bertrand, they're going to get a shock to see the new site. It's not universally popular, is it?
No, they are going to be shocked. I think we're all going to be shocked even after watching this, because there was some kind of, I had to say, like an attachment to Notre Dame. We often say it's the mother church, but I think it was more like a grandmother attachment to Notre Dame. It was a bit old. It was very ancient, and we'll go into it as if it's a sleeping beauty that just awakens. It's interesting because it was true for the cathedral inside, but also the facades. We know now that all the statues were painted, but I don't think many people would like to see them being painted, because what we love in these monuments is the fact that they're old. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the reactions of the visitors to not find an old cathedral, but a renewed cathedral.
Kezavan Gujistani, our international affairs editor, as we're watching this, I mentioned the lack of mobile phones, so we're not seeing automatic tweets, Xing from Elon Musk or Donald Trump. This is quite a moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're seeing, I would assume, most of them also knowing that they are being filmed, and no one wants to be caught on their phone, but I'm pretty sure there are some cell phones being checked. But overall, you're seeing these heads of state who are really taking in the moment. When you see some of the faces, they're looking up, they're looking around them, looking at this new cathedral, rediscovering for some of them who have been there before, or discovering for those who haven't, as we see the former French presidents, Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande. And I think what's also interesting is that there aren't just Catholics in those dignitaries. There are people who are heads of states of countries that have different religions, and yet they are here. And it does go back to what we were saying earlier, which is the symbol and the importance of Notre-Dame beyond just religion, as a landmark, as something historic in that has been part of the culture of the world, a landmark that represents France, that represents Paris, but something that is not, only for Catholics. And that's why you're seeing some of these heads of states who are not Catholics, who are taking in the moment.
Now, this is true, and it is all the easier. This cathedral is dedicated to Notre-Dame, the Blessed Virgin Mary. And you see, the Archbishop in his opening prayer insisted on the fact that it is the church of our mother, and that everyone can be welcomed here as if he were welcomed by some kind of a universal mother. And this is important because, as you know, the veneration of the Blessed of Mary, Jesus' mother, is also the case in Islam. The King of Morocco is here.
Yeah, of course. John David, the Master Mason at York Minster, having seen these scenes 40 years ago with the destruction of much of York Minster, what's it like for you, having taken part in the rebuild, to watch this moment here at Notre-Dame today?
Well, I think I'm quite astonished. After the fire, I was briefly interviewed by the BBC about the day after the fire in Notre-Dame, and I suggested it might take 5 years to rebuild. When I visited in June of 2019 and went on top of the building, I thought I was too optimistic. I just think I congratulate the French people and the organisation to bring 250 firms of craftspeople together to create this. It's absolutely wonderful.
It is.
An extremely joyous occasion.
It is. Thank you, Joe. What a striking image as well as the Archbishop amongst the congregation in those colours as well. Look at that scene.
Wow. This is going to be an interesting... it is a pity we can't hear what is being read.
Well, let's explain what's going on so we can hear it. So this is a service now moving on to what's known as the singing of the office.
Yes.
Vous êtes membres de la famille de Dieu, car vous avez été intégrés dans la construction qui a pour fondation les apôtres et les prophètes. Et la pierre angulaire, c'est le Christ Jésus lui-même. En lui, toute la construction s'élève harmonieusement pour devenir un temple saint dans le Seigneur.
So within these psalms, hymns, let's explain what we're seeing as the singing at the office, what it means. So we will see coming in the next moment the Marian hymn to the Virgin Mary, a psalm, a short reading of a biblical passage, the homily of the Holy Bishop, and then we will hear 3 significant moments to follow that we will bring you. The singing of the Magnificat, which is taken its name from the first Latin word of the entire text, the Magnificat anima mea Dominum. My soul magnified the Lord. And this, I think I'm right in saying, Jean Duchesne, is sung every evening throughout the whole church. When it was the cathedral at its opening during Vespers, the late afternoon prayers, taking its name from Greek, Espera, the evening. Now it refers as well to a passage to St. Luke. We're then going to hear the prayer, Our Father, said to be in the Christian faith the only prayer Jesus taught his disciples, sung in Latin, and then the service will end coming up with Te Deum, a song of praise dating back to the 4th century, expressing praise and thanksgiving.
The following word is Laudamus. Say, you, Lord, we praise you. And then it becomes clearer. Te Deum Laudamus.
But these are 3 pillars within the Catholic faith.
Yes. So the Te Deum, the words are supposed or may have been written in the 4th century by Saint Ambrosius, who was the Bishop of Milan, and Saint Augustine's master. And then, but there have been various, there are approximately 12 stanzas of unequal length, and it's all Latin verse, and there have been various music. I suppose the most famous one in France is the one written in the 17th century by Charpentier.
One thing
it's the one we're going to hear tonight.
Hopefully. As we wait for this and this moment to come, one thing we haven't mentioned yet amongst the world leaders, amongst those invited, the rescuers, those 2,000 or so craftsmen and women that have rebuilt this building to this point, this icon around the world, is we talked about the bird's eye view, we didn't talk about the gargoyle's eye view, and the work that's gone in for the chimeras, the gargoyles, to get them back to a state where they are sitting resplendent, because they had to be taken away, to be dusted down, to be cleaned very particularly as well.
Yes. Well, actually, they are not just ornaments, you see.
Tell us about these mythical creatures and why they're there.
Well, it is simply that there was in the Middle Ages there was some kind of a bestiary, and they said that people would represent all kinds of forces, both benevolent and hostile, through animals. And those creatures, so in fact these are just the end of gutters, so simply to get rid of the water falling on the roofs. It's got to fall somewhere, and it's not going to fall down anywhere, because otherwise it would sap the foundation of the building. So it had to be channeled somewhere. But because it was spitting out something, something that was undesirable, then they found it natural to make those the ends or the mouth or the tap of these gutters like frightening creatures. And
they worked very
of course,
well
this does not mean that they were afraid, because painting what frightens you helps you fight it and overcome it.
I was saying with the amount of water that was poured on the cathedral to extinguish the fire, they worked very well in getting rid of this, because there was so much extra weight on the structure that was already being weakened by the fire, by the collapse of the spire, and adding all that water. The gargoyles served their purpose before being then restored and changed for some of them.
And for that they're called the wounded guardians of Notre-Dame.
Exactly.
It's quite beautiful. You talk about for the drainage. Also, there's other reasons I think that they're there, not just to scare the pigeons and the birds, but also am I right to say the spiritual sense as well, to warn the congregation of what could be in the expressions on their faces and the demonic side of that?
No, it is our idea that a church, especially a cathedral, should show beautiful, attractive things. Actually, the church or the gospel or the faith is more realistic. And it does not ignore or brush aside or cover up what is unpleasant. And it asks you it shows it to you so that you can identify it and become able to fight it back.
One of the craftsmen who talked about putting the latex material all around these gargoyles and chimeras, and you couldn't put water on them, he said the first essentially restructuring of some of them that were damaged, the reaction was from the Archbishop, they were too Disneyfied, they were too happy, do it again. So he came back, they were too mean. So it's interesting how they've come back, and hopefully we'll see some of those as we continue to listen to the organ and the service.
Élargissons notre prière à la mesure du cœur de Dieu et à l'intercession de la Vierge Marie, présentons-lui les intentions de tous nos frères et sœurs.
So we're just witnessing the Magnificat at one of the significant moments, a passage from the Gospel of St. Luke, the words spoken by the Virgin Mary during her meeting with her cousin Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist in the Christian faith. So we're now going to hear a number of hymns, including Our Father in Latin. John Duchesne, just talk us through. This is essentially the culmination.
Before this, there ought to be the various prayers with the special goals.
Yes.
To pray for the church, to pray for the sick, to pray for peace in the countries where there is war, etc., to pray for the poor. And then after, there are going to be a few hymns. And, of course, the Lord's Prayer. I don't know yet whether there will be to be sung in Latin or perhaps in French. God knows.
He does indeed.
But then there is always a problem, which melody?
Yes.
The best is probably Rimsky-Korsakov, but he's Russian.
Peuples de la terre, pour ceux qui exercent la lourde charge de les gouverner et pour ceux qui subissent les horreurs de la guerre, afin que tous ensemble, nous recherchions la justice et les voies de la fraternité.
So watching world leaders who are watching on as Notre-Dame is reopened during its religious ceremony this evening, the prayers, the hymns, we're about to hear our Father Jean Duchesne was saying a moment ago, the special advisor to the Archbishop of Paris, that, not sure whether it will be in Latin or French, we are being told it will be in Latin. It's a universal language to please those who've come from outside of France, a rather diplomatic language. Ketevan Gurjestani, our international affairs editor, also watching on because as the secular and well, the powerful world leaders who are here and those associated, the richest man in the world, well, two, Bernard Arnault in France and also Elon Musk, you've been noticing that there hasn't been tweet or X free tonight. There's been some social media, we assume, within the cathedral going on.
If it was actually him who posted it, yes, Elon Musk tweeted just about an hour ago about the beautiful cathedral with a short video of the roof of the cathedral from within the cathedral. So he wanted to document being present, and I guess he is, in the end, just like us, and he wants to show that he was there and show a little piece of the beauty of the cathedral, and he himself a little bit in awe of what he sees right now.
Yeah, just like us is open to interpretation with Elon Musk. Have you seen his monthly salary? When we look at this as well, Bertrand, and you're just watching these images, I'm struck by the fact that it is a moment of everybody is completely together within this, watching the service, watching these iconic moments, the doors, that beautiful moment where the huge doors of the cathedral open, the organs striking up. Talk us through what's caught you emotionally tonight watching this.
I think it's because we saw clips of the inside already. Some was released back in June, some with the presidential visits last week. But here it's the combination of the renewed cathedral, the organ, the breathing of the lungs of the cathedral that is back into action, if I may say. And it's also the promise that soon, I mean, we're not on the top of the guest list, but soon that we also will be able to walk in it. So it's not like the ceremony of the Olympics where it was okay, get ready, the joy is about to arrive, but in some way this is the first day of a new era.
And the sense of anticipation as well. He talks about the Virgin and Christ a short while ago about how she was immaculately untouched. Did you say there was lead found on the hand of Christ?
Yes, in the Pietà, so the beautiful marble statue in the back of the church where Mary holds Jesus after his descending of the cross. There was drips of lead falling into the cathedral in various places, and it was decided here, after cleaning up the statue, to keep a bit of lead in the palm of Christ to remember the event that has happened. I think the church doesn't want to erase it, just show that it survived it.
I think we may be getting to the moment where we hear the Lord's Prayer. Let's have a listen in.
Le Seigneur soit avec vous. Que le nom du Seigneur soit béni. Notre secours est dans le nom du Seigneur. Et que Dieu Tout-Puissant et Miséricordieux vous bénisse et vous garde, le Père, le Fils et le Saint-Esprit.
Bénissons le Seigneur.
Nous rendons grâce à Dieu. Te Deum laudamus.
We're seeing the culmination of the religious service of the opening of Notre-Dame. This is Te Deum that goes back, as Jean de Chienne, the special advisor to the Archbishop of Paris, was saying, all the way to 339 to 397 AD. St. Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan. This is about praise to God. And as you say, Jean, briefly, it's about, you have to see it in its full wording to understand the message here.
Simply it says, oh God, we praise you, we give you thanks, because you saved us, because you created us, because you saved us, and it is because we appreciate all this that we are happy to sing your glory, and celebrate your power.
Let's listen. watching these images of the final moments of this service, just worth saying what we're seeing in and amongst the gathering tonight, including Bertrand. You just noticed watching the chief architect and how emotional he's become this evening.
Yeah, we've saw him a few times, always looking up, looking at his reconstruction, I guess, or also trying not to get too emotional. I think I saw him a couple of times biting his lips. His eyes were getting wet, and I guess it must be quite a fantastic evening after 5 years of battling to rebuild Notre-Dame. We know he's fond of Notre-Dame since he was a teenager. He's got Notre-Dame tattooed on his arm, on his chest, and on his heart. And I mean, you see celebrities that are happy to be here, and head of states that, you know, some had to be here, etc. I think he might be quite lonely in this moment, looking up at his.
No, there is a romanticism to that thread. We'll talk about it in a moment, how it goes back even to Eugène Viollet-le-Duc in the 1800s. We've just seen the spire as well. We haven't talked much about the spire. As we watch the congregation start to leave, and we'll start to see the world leaders leaving as well. The cockerel, the golden cockerel that was damaged, they found it, but there is a new cockerel, and it has within it, I think, a thorn from that he designed, the architect, and there is within it, am I right to say, a thorn from the crown of thorns said to have been placed back within that?
A few relics, yes, if I'm not mistaken. One also of Saint Geneva, the patron saint of Paris. There's also a word to be grateful to the ones who rebuilt Notre-Dame that was installed in it. And the original rooster is going to be shown into a museum that will be built on the plaza in front of Notre-Dame. Hopefully. And it's a beautiful story because they found it was intact, but it was decided to replace it with a new one that will show that the cathedral has survived. And this is a mix between a rooster and a phoenix coming back from its ashes.
And there is this message, isn't there, about passing it on to the next generations. I mentioned the paints. They had basically a paint that you can take off and strip off, so you know exactly which generation added the application since Eugène Viollet-le-Duc. And also you talk about the cockerel, symbolism, so for future generations will know exactly what happened here. Even when it comes to the lead roof, and they have to separate basically some of the wood that's been back on between the roof, and to separate the wood, the oak, which has tannin in it, you have to put paper. And back in the 1800s, they used newspaper. This time, symbolically, they just put one newspaper, so future generations can remember what was going on at the time.
Yes.
In 2019.
I think it's important also to note that the church has been, the cathedral, Notre-Dame, has been quite revitalized in the last few decades. And especially because Cardinal Lustiger decided to make it the central meeting point in Paris. You see, he would celebrate every Sunday evening at the cathedral, and that was very important. And also, he would have the cathedral on his stationery, which had never been done before, and he would distribute, pictures of Notre-Dame as presents to the bishops inviting him or whom he received. And that was an important stage, and we can also remember it today.
And as we watch world leaders start to leave outside into the drizzle of the 4th arrondissement to go, some of the invited guests to the Élysée Palace to dinner with the Macrons, Ketavan Gurjistani, I think so far this will be seen as a job well done for Emmanuel Macron.
Absolutely. I think today was a brief maybe, but a respite from all the turmoil of domestic politics, and the day has gone really as well as it could, maybe even despite the weather, with the diplomatic sequence before, with that trilateral meeting with Donald Trump, with Vladimir Zelensky, that was very important and that is receiving quite a lot of praise. I was looking a little bit throughout the ceremony at what was being said about that. And then, of course, this ceremony where he also spoke, and it was something, as you mentioned, that you were among those who were not really sure that it was going to be done in 5 years. He did it. And I just wanted to say one thing, seeing this cathedral from the outside at night, that we finally have what we know of the skyline of Paris back, because there are not that many monuments in Paris that are that tall. There's the Eiffel Tower, the cathedral, and now no scaffolding, and it's back.
No scaffolding. Let's listen to the largest, the oldest bell that peals tonight, Emmanuel. Talked about Emmanuel, we can hear all of the bells of Notre-Dame tonight, and they're all names. We were hearing from Jean Duchesne a moment ago, the Archbishop of Paris' special advisor, talk about the foundry in Normandy, where they've been made since the medieval ages and still to this day. They are Gabriel, the largest aside from Emmanuel, named after Archangel Gabriel. We have Anne Geneviève, the patron saint of Paris, and descending order, Denis, Marcel, Etienne, Benoit, Joseph, Maurice, and Jean-Marie. And I think it's worth saying that 6 of them pretty much survived intact. There were 2 quite damaged in the fire that had to go back to the foundry.
Yes, but the foundry still exists, and they know how to. They've kept the know-how,
the savoir-faire,
how to make real bells in Villedieu-les-Poêles.
It's very interesting, Ben, when we look at this, Bertrand, because you talk about the romanticism, you talked about, the tattoo that the architect has on his chest and by his heart. If you go back to the days of, I mentioned Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, the master architect, many see as the father of modern architecture. We listened to John David a second ago at York Minster, his influence. Well, he was 30 when he was given that job. He won a competition, essentially his love for the Middle Ages got him to the position he was in. He remembers, he talked about going to Notre Dame at 3 years old, seeing the rose window, hearing the music, and thinking, being scared, crying. It wasn't he when he came away.
Absolutely. Well, he won. He was the assistant to the architect who won, called Lassus, Jean-Baptiste Lassus, who died during the restoration. So it adds up to the romanticism, knowing that the General Georgelin also died while restoring Notre-Dame once again.
And oddly, they both died while walking in the mountains. General Georgelin in the Pyrenees and Eugène Viollet-le-Duc in the Alps.
I think sometimes history is better than any novels. If you remember when Notre Dame burned, it was the day President Macron was supposed to give this big speech to the nation after the as a conclusion to the Yellow Vest movement, and did not happen. Here it seems that it's saving him a little bit from the turmoil, as you said, and the restoration of Notre Dame will never be finished. Otherwise, it will mean that the building is not alive anymore, and I think that is going to open a lot of debates about, do we add newer things to the cathedral?
Let's listen into the national anthem, the Marseillaise.
Unfortunately, no one pays any attention anymore to what it says.
To the Marseillaise, well, we're watching the conclusion, Jean Duchesne, of the service of the reopening of Notre-Dame after 5 years and 7 months. They did it. We got to this stage. Maybe it's a mere breath in the life of Notre-Dame after 850 years, but it's taken a lot of toil, sweat, tears, 2,000 people to rebuild it, tens of thousands of people to donate. You know, we're seeing almost €1 billion, fittingly, 850 years of the cathedral. We've seen 850 billion euros donated. Let me ask you something, Jean Duchesne. When it comes to the Archbishop, we've heard about the rebuild. We saw inside the cathedral tonight for that service. How has it really gone down amongst the clergy? And for the Archbishop, the new style, the new altar, the new furniture, the new look?
Well, I mean,
are they happy?
I mean, the Archbishop is aware that each generation, each single Archbishop is called to bring something new, to add something to the cathedral. It is an unfinished work. It is a work that will never be finished. And the glory of Notre Dame is that she's always asking you to bring something to her, to offer something to her. So this is how it is a motivation, not to send you somewhere else, but to motivate you to give more.
I want to go to Notre-Dame. I'm going to bring in Claire Paquelin, our correspondent, who's just been in the service at the cathedral. Claire, tell us about, we're with Claire, in fact, in a moment. She's just coming out of the cathedral. Ketavan, let's bring you back in and just your thoughts, mixing the political and the religious tonight. And what a spectacle.
It was really a spectacle. They pulled it off. They did it within just over 5 years. Not everyone thought it was going to work out, and I think it was a pretty intense event and ceremony, even for people who are not, believers, who are maybe not Catholic, but it was something that was a little bit bigger, and you saw it with the people in the crowd. There were politicians from all angles. There were heads of state, heads of government from all across the world, from different nations, different religions. You had the first responders, those who saved this cathedral and who made it possible to be there today. And you had artists, and you had normal people, a few lucky few who managed to be invited. And I think now it just opens up the door for regular people to be able to come and see the cathedral. I think the tickets have been sold out, because now you're going to have to book your tickets ahead of time in order to be able to visit the cathedral. I'm not just talking about this week, which will have a special celebration with Mass and different things, but even down the road, it's going to be very, very hard. And I think we'll have to wait a little bit if for those of us who haven't jumped on the opportunity to get a ticket to go inside.
It's a good point, Bertrand. I was trying to get a ticket this week. It went online. Within 25 minutes, the ceremonies for the Mass tomorrow and the consecration of the furniture within the cathedral. All the seats are gone for the next week, gone. And already we're seeing into December, people simply cannot get a chance to get in there yet. It's going to be very, well, you talked about the Olympics. There's this kind of Olympic feeling about just getting inside to feel what it's like.
That's true. Although it's not going to last for 2 weeks. At least we hope so.
We hope.
And the tickets that were put online, it was to attend the Mass for the first week. So only a few people can be attending Mass, about 1,500, while they expect that by when the people will be allowed to visit even outside of Mass, there will be up to 40,000 people. So nearly 30 times more people will be going in the cathedral after the 16th of December. So it's 1 more week of being patient. After that, things should be much easier.
And I assume for your tour group, amongst that procession, the steady stream coming in will be those accompanying you.
Yes, although we've been asked to not give tours for 6 months to make room for worshippers. So we'll be patient. We'll go as individuals, which is great. So we won't have questions. We'll just have a free mind,
enjoy the
enjoying
moment
for ourselves. And by mid-June, as guides, we will finally be allowed to walk through the cathedral, commenting it.
Let's get a sense of how it is from the outside of the cathedral amongst the crowds watching tonight. Clovis Caselli is there.
Yes, Gavin, indeed, the religious ceremony has now ended. This came after the Republican ceremony and now a cultural one. That's what the Élysée Palace told us. They wanted to have 3 stages tonight, 3 different parts, and the concert now has begun with a French singer called Garou, who played in a musical that some might know called Notre-Dame de Paris, very popular here in France and in the Francophone world. This concert was actually recorded yesterday because they were anticipating the heavy rains and the winds, and therefore they wanted to record it yesterday just to be sure and careful. And so we don't know exactly what is in this concert, but it appears that yesterday Pharrell Williams also performed, as well as the Chinese pianist Lang Lang, just to name a few. And then there's also a classical music part to this evening. And I can tell you that people are still here. The crowds are still here. 40,000 people along the banks of the Seine with their umbrellas, even though the rain has slightly stopped. They're still here despite the weather, despite the cold, and the eyes turn towards these giant screens along the banks of the Seine. This is kind of the last part of a very special day with the reopening of Notre-Dame Cathedral. And behind me, the cathedral guests, heads of state leaving, and the buses already there waiting for those who are still left inside.
What's maintaining you through this outside in the cold and the drizzle throughout the day and into the evening, into the night? Is it, what is it, a dram of whiskey, a bit of coffee, big flask? Tell us, Clovis, what's the secret?
No whiskey, no tea, no coffee. I'm going to give you a bit of behind the scenes here. We've been stuck here from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. No possibility to leave this bridge. It's a beautiful location in the heart of Paris, but it's cold, there's rain. When we finish in an hour or so, we will go and get a cup of tea. It might not be whiskey for me, possibly beer, but I'll remain a bit secret about that. But it has been a very special moment for anyone who loves Notre-Dame. I was born and raised in Paris, and Notre-Dame is in the heart of the capital. It's a very special place for the Parisians. This landmark's been here for over 800 years. Back in the days, hundreds of years ago, you had homes, houses just outside Notre-Dame, along these bridges. The capital has been built, if you will, around this special landmark, and indeed this is a Saturday night at work, very different from others.
Clovis, great having you on, and it's worth it. Ça vaut la peine, as they say, especially on this moment of history and having to endure as Our Lady has endured. Great to talk to you this evening. Jean Duchesne, just listening to that, when you talked right at the start about having a very marked difference to make sure the church is separated from the Republican ceremony, yes. Do you think Archbishop Laurent Ulrich will be happy with tonight?
Well, I think he can arguably be pleased. I suppose they see that everything went on schedule. They found an acceptable compromise with allowing the president to speak inside the cathedral, but not infringing on the privilege of the clergy. So I think that it was a very good example of, let us say, French laicité at its best.
I want to go to a final word with John David, because the link across the channel to the UK, the burning of York Minster, that he's the master mason at York Minster. Just a last thought from you, John David, tonight on what's it been like watching this ceremony, having been through a similar thing with York Minster, and the emotional night for you.
Yeah, I think it's just been a wonderful experience to, in a way, relive a similar circumstance. But I must say, with great respect to York Minster, this Notre Dame is so important, not just to France, but to the world. It's very symbolic. And I look forward to visiting in March with the Cathedral Workshop Fellowship from England, who undertake a training program, much like the Compagnon in France. And I look forward to seeing the new work and a building which might look inside much as it did when it was actually first built.
Yeah. No, it's lovely to talk to you this evening, John David, Master Mason at York Minster. I want to bring Bertrand back in. We were talking about your tour and having to wait a little bit, 6 months or so, and you will be able to go in. I was talking the other day to correspondent Agnès Poirier, who's written a beautiful book about Notre-Dame, done a documentary for the BBC on it as well, and going back and forth, spending time with the craftsmen. And she said, what we saw tonight, the luminosity of the building, and it's open for a lot of debate, which is caused about whether people think it's too too photogenic and not enough Gothic. But she says it's very different to when you go in. And I guess that also adds to the excitement of just seeing it, feeling it will be different.
I don't think it's just Instagram. There was exactly the same debate when the cathedral was being restored by Viollet-le-Duc, where that they thought he was too modern.
Was that Reddit back then?
Probably. And there was even debate when Notre-Dame was being built. There was debate within the church whether so much money should be used into building a church, or if it should be used for serving the poor, etc. So I think Notre-Dame shows a little bit of who we are. We have our contradiction, and part of us want to see it renewed. So I think we will see a Notre-Dame much closer to the one that was desired by the first architects and the first companions. But at the same time, it has to be also, it will take time for us to get our grasp on it a little bit and to be used to sing this cathedral of light, which is what it should be.
Within the city of light, of course.
And not this dusty old cathedral that reminds us that it's survived through the ages. So it will be a challenge, that's for sure.
We're struck by, and we talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to expand on it now we have time, now the ceremony is finished, as the world leaders start to head to the Élysée Palace for dinner with the Macrons. Is when you look at the building itself and kind of the beauty of the building, you talked about the companions of duty, this sort of guild over the years that have built maybe 250 firms, many family firms as well, and how they've passed that tradition on. Tell us about that.
I think what has been the most passionate thing to see with Notre-Dame is how quickly the debate about how should we rebuild it with making a whole new feature, maybe a glass spire, etc., was closed to no, we have the know-how, we have the savoir-faire, as you said, and that has given a boost to all these companies because it's not every day you build a cathedral or you rebuild a cathedral. And what we hear from these people is how so many young workers started their career with working on Notre-Dame, and it's telling us that for the next 40 years or so, we'll have the know-how is going to be perpetuated for that.
I was listening to one of the American carpenters, Robert Dubois, appropriately named, from Georgia. He said he was a family of Huguenots who left and, the generations on, but he couldn't speak French. It was the first time coming back to Notre-Dame to have some help. And he said when he first arrived, the first week, he felt, OK, this will be good for my CV. But then was transformed by the energy, the beauty, sitting with the same team, because we talked about the lead earlier. You can't leave and come back in without showers and changes, so they all eat together. They have a choir together with the best voices who will sing tomorrow at Mass. So you have that real spirit, as Emmanuel Macron said, of fraternity.
Yes, when you build, when you work on something so big, so beautiful, so old, I mean, it cannot be a personal affair. It's really a personal business. And it's something you quickly, I suppose, realize that you can do things, you can participate only if you become part of a team. And that's not only a team with a precise, specific goal, but something that presupposes, requires a personal link to others, to friends, not to friends, better to comrades, to colleagues, to people you work with. And you like them, and even you love them because you work with them. And it's not the other way around. We would like to work with people we love. In this case, we learn to love the people we work with.
You were telling me a moment ago, and people are just watching, we're seeing images of highlights, just in case you thought for a second, hang on, is the Archbishop going back in with the shepherd's stick, the crozier? This reminds me of something you were both, Bertrand and Jean Duchesne, talking about earlier. There's an issue with the keys of Notre-Dame. There was a kind of power play going on. Bertrand, tell us about this.
Yes, there was... The ceremony was supposed to be the retransmission of the key by the president to the archbishop. Symbolically speaking, we've done the work. Now we hand you back the key of the cathedral. But I think I read the archbishop said we never lost the key. So they are the assignee of the cathedral. The state is the owner. But that didn't stop with the fire. It was still the case. Notre-Dame was never deconsecrated, so it was still an active church, although Mass was not said in it, but it was not out of the church league of churches, if I may say.
So essentially, that you yes. never had the key to let you know yes. that we've always had the authority yes. over the cathedral.
Well, actually, see, the government was tempted to act as a generous landlord. You see, yeah. And Mr. Macron would have loved to say, look, this is the key, I give it back to you. And then the Archbishop answered that he had never lost the key. And
do you think
he still had the key?
Do you think it matters that the Pope wasn't here tonight?
No, I don't think it makes much difference. He sent a long message to show that he did not underestimate the importance, the relevance, the significance of the event. But I think that he felt that he was not necessary. And actually, in most church ceremonies. The Pope it is necessary to mention him. It's not necessary to bring him every time.
Ketevan, we should say at this point, as the leaders have been leaving, talk us through what's going on right now from here. They're all heading to the Elysee.
Well, I don't know if all of them are heading there because...
They're technically invited, aren't they?
Technically, they're all invited,
yeah.
Yes. There is a dinner taking place at the Elysee, away from the cameras. So a private dinner, but a big one if most of them say yes, which I assume that a lot of the guests that we saw there, at least the heads of state and governments, will be going. The question is, of course, sometimes there are scheduling issues that mean that they have to fly back somewhere and go homes. But it's a little bit of the diplomatic sequence that is coming back because now we're done with the ceremony, at least for today. And now all those politicians are going back to have a dinner. They'll be sitting next to some other heads of state. There'll be conversations happening at that dinner. These are the times when these leaders get to speak in private without anyone, without any automatic agenda or thought of agenda, just off the cuff discussions between these leaders.
It is worth saying, given sort of the triage of kind of trying to understand the amount of global issues of concern right now, crises, conflicts, when we look at Ukraine, we look at the situation in the Middle East, probably in some ways fortuitous that it was the president-elect here today and not Joe Biden, given that as we're on air through the day as well, we're hearing about the rebels in Syria, close to having approached, according to US officials, Damascus. No sign yet of President Assad. So we have all of this, while all these world leaders within the cathedral, and yet another global crisis going on that Washington, has a big hand in working out what to do next.
Absolutely, because global crises don't wait for the U.S. president's inauguration. They happen, and you need to deal with them. And it's true that, yes, technically, it is still Joe Biden, the president, but Donald Trump is the one who's going to be inheriting the world situation in several weeks. And he's the one who, in the end, is going to have to deal with them because there's that much that Joe Biden can do before January 20th, when that inauguration will happen. And so it is for Donald Trump. And I think that one of the reasons why he also accepted is not just because of Notre-Dame and just because of the pomp and circumstance, but also because he has said that he wanted to start working before the inauguration, that things didn't wait. And that is why he's also here. And there's been now some reporting from people who have close sources within Donald Trump's team that he considered for several days that Emmanuel Macron had been trying to convince him to do that meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, that it was initially planned to be separated, and that it took a little bit of convincing, but in the end, Donald Trump agreed to that and was willing to do that joint, that trilateral meeting. And so it seems that Donald Trump and his team saw this moment as something that they found positive, that they saw interest in, and that is why it actually happened. And we have that image of the three presidents of the US, France, and Ukraine standing there together. I don't know if all three of them, or at least the two foreigners, are going to be at the dinner. Perhaps we'll find out probably very soon if they're there. But if they are, maybe those conversations will continue.
Well, as we talk about this, comparative moment of history, comparative to the fact that we talk about global crises, it's a mere breath to Notre-Dame, who's seen revolutions, the threat of Nazis, of terror in the past. This is yet another moment in 850 years. Let me ask, in the final minutes of the programme, each of you, starting with you, Bertrand, in the 5 or so years of the rebuild, has there been a moment that's stuck out with you, the moment to get back to this point that kind of epitomises it in its rebirth and renaissance?
In the last 5 years?
Yeah. Is there one moment, one thing that really struck with you? It could be tonight.
I think it was when they finished taking out the scaffoldings that had burned, and it was, most people didn't realize, they thought the day after that the cathedral was saved, fire was finished. But no, for months there was this threat, this dark thread on the cathedral with the scaffoldings that was attached to the stones, etc., and could have, make the wall collapse inwards. And so when Notre Dame was finally saved, I think that was the best memory of the last 5 years.
What about for you, Ketavan, living here, seeing all the work going on, seeing all of the moments in time and reporting on it too?
Well, I was actually gone for 4 years. I was in the United States, and I would come back, and sometimes I would walk past the scaffolding, the covered Notre-Dame being restored. And every time I would walk by it and be like, oh, I can't take a picture. It's still not done. It's still not done. And it's sort of, as a Parisian, you forget, but it is part of what Clovis was saying, which is that it's something that's been there our whole lives, and we're used to seeing it. And when it's covered, and when it's covered for 5 years and it's being restored, you don't have it. It's the skyline and the visuals of Paris are different. And so when I saw the first image of it unveiled, if you will, back to its glory, that was for me. Oddly enough, not so much the inside, even though it's beautiful but it was really the outside. It was sort of Paris is back. It has what we're used to.
And even saying merci, merci, merci tonight. Jean Duchesne, for you, a moment.
Well, the moment was when they started rebuilding the spire. You see, because, actually, I must confess, I'm no great fan of that spire. So I think
why?
Well, I think that it's not really in tune with the rest.
Yeah. It goes back to the modern debate, doesn't it?
That's exactly what I call 19th century Gothic.
Yeah.
Right, because you see, there's always, in the original Gothic style, there's always a touch of madness or craziness. It is not symmetrical. It is not perfect. This is what, see, when you walk into an American cathedral, for example, it is amazing, and then after a while, you quickly find it boring. Why? Because it is perfect, absolutely symmetrical. Everything is, because it was built too quickly. with the best intention of the world, no doubt. So in a European cathedral, especially in French cathedrals, there's always something crazy somewhere. And so, but anyway, when they were able to rebuild that spire, which I did not like, I felt that I would accept it because this meant that the rest could support it.
Jean Duchesne, wonderful to have you on board, Special Advisor to the Archbishop of Paris. Also to you, Bertrand Delaman, the founder of the tour company My Private Paris. Ketavan Gujastoni, also thank you, our International Affairs Editor. And to John David, the Master Mason at your Minster as well. Thank you for watching. As President Macron said, from ashes to art. Let's have a look back at the best moments of tonight.
Éveille-toi, orgue.